Chapter 45:21. Hate me? Feng Gu sneered. Don't you love me to death? When she said this, her eyes were filled with disdain, as though she disdained his feelings, or as though she was extremely disdainful of his love for her. Blood-bone barbaric king was in so much pain that his vision blurred. He gritted his teeth and groaned word by word. Now I know. How silly I was in the past, to actually like a slut like you, for so many years. So much that he didn't even care about his life, causing himself to end up in such a state. Then you're not too stupid, at least now you know my true colors. Feng Gu seemed to be very happy, her eyes were filled with coldness. You'd better kill me. Otherwise, I will definitely kill you. Blood-bone barbaric king gritted his teeth and roared. But he had lost too much blood and the pain in his body. It made him almost speechless. Feng Gu looked at him coldly, the corners of her lips curled into a cold arc. Kill you? Of course I can't kill you. She pointed to the front, at the sky full of black holes. This is something I specially made in the Nirvana realm, it's still in the experimental stage, help me. Guard this place well. Feng Gu casually threw him into that black hole. Blood-bone barbaric king groaned, and was thrown into the black hole. Instantly, countless black chi gushed out from that black hole, like thousands of hands, grabbing hold of blood-bone barbaric king and swallowing him. Blood-bone barbaric king's shrill scream was heard from the black hole. Those blood-curdling screams. It made one's heart tremble. Yiqing Luo's heart also trembled. Blood-bone barbaric king was an especially tolerant person. Even the long sword pierced through his chest. He didn't even make a sound when the long sword pierced into his shoulder and lifted him up. But, when he was thrown into the black hole, he let out a blood-curdling scream that showed the pain in the black hole. It was an unbearable pain for him. Yiqing Luo stared at Feng Gu without blinking. Her heart was still trembling. Feng Ji's eyes had no trace of emotion. It was as though she didn't care about anything about blood-bone barbaric king. What was she trying to do? Who's that? Suddenly, Feng Ji's eyes turned cold as she reprimanded. He raised his sword and flipped it in his palm. Yiqing Luo instantly felt a chill down her spine. It was like being stared at by a venomous snake. It was bone-chilling. Her heart skipped a beat as she met Feng Ji's murderous gaze. She quickly backed away. However, how could her speed compare to the Divine Emperor's? In the blink of an eye, Feng Ji's long sword had already pierced her eyeball. Just then, when it was still a little distance away from the eyeball, Yiqing Luo only felt her vision turning black. The surrounding space began to distort rapidly. As the ground shook, she felt as if she had fallen into an abyss. His whole body kept falling down. What was going on? Just now, it felt like he was jumping to the next part of his memory. Why was she falling from the sky in the next memory? Yiqing Luo wanted to flop around. However, he could not move his limbs at all, until the restraints on his body were broken. Only then did her vision regain its brightness. However, right now, she was floating in midair. Their surroundings were pitch black, and they couldn't see their surroundings clearly. She tried to move. She discovered that she could actually walk in midair. It was like her soul was the same. What kind of situation was this? Bone Lord! Suddenly, a soft voice was heard from below. Yiqing Luo was stunned as she swiftly floated towards the voice. Chapter 45:22. In front of her, it was a piece of black sea. Two figures were moving bit by bit as they walked in the black sea. Walking? Sea? No. Not right. This was not the sea. Yiqing Luo's figure slowly leaned downwards. He could clearly see the figures of those people. They were that lady called Gu San and Gu Yi, blood-bone barbaric king's secret guards. These two of them were of course not those few secret guards that Yiqing Luo had interacted with in the outside world. The Gu residence's secret guards were ranked according to their numbers. This batch of secret guards should be the earliest batch of secret guards that followed the blood-bone barbaric king. Bone Lord, where are you? Gu San called out softly, looking at his expression. He seemed to be struggling. Yiqing Luo carefully avoided the two of them and landed at a position slightly behind the both of them. She could see clearly. The surroundings were not a piece of black sea. It was obviously a ball of thick black fog. A piece of pitch-black darkness. There was no place to hide. She could only maintain a distance as she followed behind those two secret guards. The two secret guards' attention had been focused on searching for the blood-bone barbaric king and did not notice anything strange. Just at this moment, suddenly there were a few cracking sounds in front of him. She saw the entire sky filled with thick black fog. One by one, the blood-colored bones stepped out. Kacha kacha! Even her ears were filled with the sound of the bones colliding. Yiqing Luo then saw it clearly. Under the thick black, there was a large patch of densely packed blood bones, and her surroundings were also covered with large patches of blood bones. But what shocked her was her body penetrated through every single blood bone. The densely packed, connected blood bones all passed through her body, as though they could not sense her existence at all. Yiqing Luo stretched out her hand to touch the blood bones. Her hand went through the blood bones. Yiqing Luo's heart thumped. Her gaze swiftly turned towards the Gu residence's secret guards. Was it these blood bones an illusion? Or was it her problem? Following the densely packed blood bones appearing, Gu Yi and Gu San's searching footsteps stopped. Gu San raised his head, looking at the blood bones that were almost as tall as a two-story building, his eyes filled with worry. Bone Lord, why are you looking for us? The two Bone Mansion secret guards stood away from the bloody bones. They also seemed to be very afraid of touching the blood bones. Kacha, kacha! Along with the sound of bones cracking, a head slowly slid down the joints and appeared in front of the two of them. It was the head of the barbaric blood-bone king. His face was pale and his eyes were filled with malice. He was like a trapped beast, so gloomy that it made people's hearts tremble. Take this out. The blood-bone barbarian king's hoarse voice sounded. A small baby wrapped in a soft substance was thrown into the arms of Bone San. Gu San hurriedly received it. Then, she looked at the baby in her arms. His cheeks were pink and he looked like he was sleeping peacefully. Her eyes reddened. Bone Lord, you spent so much effort to get in touch with us just to let us bring the child out? Gu San's voice was choked with emotion. Get out! The barbaric blood-bone king shouted sternly. Gu San hugged the baby tightly. His eyes were red as he looked at the barbaric blood-bone king's current appearance. This child is the child of the Emperor of God. You became like this because of the Emperor of God. Bone Lord, why do you have to hurt yourself like this for her child? You don't want to listen to this God's words? The barbaric blood-bone king's voice became hoarser and sharper. After this loud shout, he couldn't stop coughing violently. Chapter 45:23. Bone Monarch. Bone 1 hurriedly said, Bone 3 is just concerned about you. Back then, Bone Lord did not devour this baby. Instead, he hid it in his own blood and bones. Feng Gu was deceived. When he was thrown into the black hole by Feng Gu, not only did Bone Lord have to fight against the evil aura in the black hole, but he also had to fight against it. He also had to protect the baby as much as possible. Until now, only then did Bone Lord have enough power to establish contact with the dark guards of the Bone Residence. It was not easy for them to rush to the Nirvana realm and the black hole that was suppressing the Bone Lord. Bone Lord's request was not for them to think of a way to break the seal on the black hole and rescue him. Instead, he asked them to leave with the baby. See the baby. They would think of the culprit who caused their Bone Lord to be reduced to such a state. How could they be willing to take their children out? You have no right to tell me what to do. The barbaric blood-bone monarch's voice became sharper. The blood and bones around them tightly wrapped around the two of them. Take the child out and take good care of him. Don't hand it over to anyone. The two realized the blood-bone barbarian monarch's intention and immediately said, Bone Monarch, tell us, is there any way to save you? We can't take care of this child. Bang! Before the two of them could finish their conversation, he was lifted up by the blood-bone barbarian king and thrown out of the thick black fog. After a while, silence returned to the surroundings. The barbaric blood-bone king also did not move for a long time. Yiqing Luo saw the pain in his eyes. Yiqing Luo pursed her lips slightly. He slowly walked towards the blood-bone barbarian king. He was not worried that the barbaric blood-bone king would discover him. For this place, she was just a soul. The Bone Mansion's secret guards could touch the blood-bone barbarian king's blood bones. And she couldn't. She could float around in this place. This meant that she no longer had a physical body. As expected, she approached the blood-bone barbarian king. The barbaric blood-bone king did not move either. The skull embedded in the bloody bone looked like a statue. Until Yiqing Luo approached. Only then did he vaguely hear a few sounds. Qing Luo. Qing Luo. Qing Luo. Yiqing Luo's heart immediately tightened. His eyes widened. What the barbaric blood-bone king shouted was her name. Just as she was about to lean in closer to hear more clearly, a voice suddenly rang out. Suddenly, her hand felt like it was being sucked by a huge suction force. She didn't have time to react. His body was suddenly sucked up by the suction force. Then, his body fell heavily to the ground. The feeling of weightlessness made Yiqing Luo cry out in shock. Suddenly, he opened his eyes. What greeted his eyes was a patch of dazzling sunlight. It stung her eyes and hurt a little. She raised her hand to cover her eyes. A large palm covered her eyes. His slender fingers massaged her eyes with just the right amount of strength. The familiar scent of sandalwood seeped into his nose. Yiqing Luo's hands grabbed that huge palm as she turned around abruptly. She saw the face that she longed for even in her dreams. Her face was reflected in his obsidian-like eyes. Yiqing Luo's eyes widened. Xian. The person in front of her was Dmo Xian. She raised her hand and pinched Dmo Xian's cheek, giving him a hard pinch. Are you real? Surely I'm not still in the memory space, right? Chapter 45-24. Dmo Xian laughed softly. His long, slender hand held her little hand and clasped it in his palm. You're back. He held on to her hand and slowly placed it on his face. Finally back. He murmured softly as he slowly closed his eyes. Feeling her scent, her warmth. Men rarely showed such a harmless expression on her face. Yiqing Luo's heart was in a mess. From the man's big palm helping her to rub her eyes. From his aura enveloping her body and mind. She was certain. This Dmo Xian. He was her Xian. She had returned to the real world. This was no longer the barbaric blood-bone king's memory. Yiqing Luo's eyes gazed deeply at the man's elegant face. His picturesque eyebrows revealed an obvious tired look. His thick eyelashes spread out, casting an arc, but it was unable to hide the purple under his eyes. How long had she stayed in the barbaric blood-bone king's memory? This man, how long had he been looking for her? Yiqing Luo's hands slowly covered his eyes. Xian, I'm sorry, I made you worried. I know nothing will happen. Dmo Xian closed her hand and placed it by his lips as he gently kissed it. I just missed. Knowing that nothing would happen to her was one thing. Worrying was another. I missed too. Yiqing Luo's lips curled into a sweet smile as she generously sent her lips over and kissed him. Dmo Xian's arms wrapped around her petite body, until the young lady gave a low laugh and that soft little tongue drilled into his mouth. His body shook. He suddenly pressed the back of the young lady's head and deepened the kiss. Their breaths intertwined. Like a life and death entanglement, they used their own way to declare their longing for each other. After some time, Dmo Xian then released the young lady and hugged her tightly in his arms. Yiqing Luo could clearly hear the man's strong and powerful heartbeat. Once, from her eardrums, it penetrated her heart. Yiqing Luo's brows curved as her little hand followed his waist and slowly slid down. I thought that you wouldn't be able to restrain yourself and continue to do some overboard things. Dmo Xian clasped her hand, his eyes filled with warning. Don't stir up the fire if you continue. I don't care if I'm tired or not. Yiqing Luo hurriedly retracted her hand and pushed her little head against his chest. I'm tired, I'm so tired that I can't move, I can't take advantage of others' difficulties. Her hands were no longer messy. His little head began to rub against the fire. Dmo Xian looked at the furry little head in his arms as a helpless yet pampering smile flashed past his eyes. He held the girl's delicate body tightly and stopped her from teasing him any further. If you tease me again, I'll take it that you want it. Yiqing Luo giggled as she stuck her head out from his arms and circled her arms around his neck. All right, I won't tease you anymore. Isn't it so hard to see you? I'm happy. Dmo Xian bit her nose and his low and hoarse voice revealed a bewitching magnetism. Now let's play, tonight. Let's try. Yiqing Luo's cheeks blushed slightly. The two of them joked around for a while. The warm and sweet atmosphere made Yiqing Luo's exhausted heart finally find peace. She leaned into Dmo Xian's arms as she played with his slender fingers and asked casually, That's right, the one who entered the ancestral hall with me was that Palace Lord Ming from Secluded Palace. Have you seen him? Download address. Phone reading. Chapter 45-25. Dmo Xian lowered his head and bit her earlobe. The strength between his lips and teeth was a little strong. Yiqing Luo felt itchy and painful, her body was still trembling slightly. Just asking a question and you need to be jealous, please let me go, listening to the young girl's soft pleading. The man then let go of her earlobe. But, his thin lips were still attached to her ear. Between the rubbing of the lips, there was a scorching heat. He came out from the ancestral hall 2 days ago. Dmo Xian's voice sounded a little low, as if he was in a bad mood. He was also the one who told me that he had entered the blood-bone barbaric king's memory. Yiqing Luo blinked her eyes and clicked her tongue. Looks like Bai Su really hates me. Bai Su? Dmo Xian frowned slightly. What has it got to do with Bai Su? Yiqing Luo pounced on him and pressed him under her body. What exactly is the relationship between you and Bai Su? Dmo Xian supported her and let her lie firmly in his arms. He looked down at her and asked, What did Bai Su do? Answer my question first. Yiqing Luo climbed up his chest and both her hands pinched his face. After you answer my question, I will then know what kind of tone I should use to complain. Dmo Xian's pupils contracted slightly. He held Yiqing Luo's slender waist. In his heart, he had roughly guessed something. But, he still followed Yiqing Luo's words. To me, she is both a teacher and a friend. Since I have memories, she has been by my side like an elder sister, teaching me a lot, how to survive in this world. Since you have memories? Yiqing Luo caught the main point. Amnesia? Not considered as amnesia. Dmo Xian shook his head. Just can't remember, the things in the past? But those to me are not important. How can it not be important? Yiqing Luo sat up straight, her little but sat on his stomach, both hands clutching his lapel. I said, I don't seem to have heard anything about family. You've actually forgotten about it. Don't you want to know, who is your father, don't want to find them and ask why they separated? The girl lowered her head and met his eyes. Her soft silky black hair cascaded down and landed on Dmo Xian's body and face. His hand gently rested on the young girl's slender waist as he gently curled his lips into a smile. With Lil Luo Air by my side, it is enough. He did not have much need for his past memories. He thought about what had happened in the past. To him, it was not difficult at all. It was just that he didn't want to, and couldn't be bothered to think about it. In his memory, having Lil Luo Air was his greatest happiness. The man's words instantly softened Yi Qing Luo's heart. She pursed her lips and patted his chest weakly. You only know how to seduce me with words of love and move me. I can't beat you. Dmo Xian pinched her waist. Now can you tell me what happened between you and Baisu? Yi Qing Luo pouted her lips and snorted. Even if Baisu is a teacher and a friend, I still want to complain. She rambled on and on about how Bai Mei had been deceived by the Palace of Gloomy Shadows and used as a sacrifice to unlock the barbaric Bloodbone King's memories. She also complained about Baisu's attitude towards her in an aggrieved manner. After that she hammered his chest. You had to wait for the Palace Lord of Gloomy Shadows to tell you, only then did you know that I was in the Ancestral Hall. Baisu saw me entering the barbaric Bloodbone King's memories with her own eyes, so she obviously did not tell you on purpose. Download address. Phone reading. Chapter 45-26. Dmo Xian held her hand as his eyes turned extremely gloomy. I met her at the Ancestral Hall. Yi Qing Luo pretended to put on a fierce expression as she snorted lightly. See, she did it on purpose. Yes, she told me that she only saw that person from secluded palace in the Ancestral Hall, and had never seen you. Dmo Xian's expression turned darker and darker. He put his arm around the girl's waist. He slowly sat up straight. Yi Qing Luo wrapped her arms around his neck. Do you believe me or her? I believe you. Dmo Xian replied without any hesitation as he placed a hand on her waist and said word by word, Lil Luer, to me, you are more important than anything else. He slightly lowered his eyes, and a trace of coldness flashed across his eyes. Baisu, he hadn't thought about it. One day, he and Baisu would end up like this. Baisu was doing this for Bai Mei. He hated his little Luo, even when he knew that Lil Luo was in danger. She even hid everything from him. Yes, Baisu is too much. Yi Qing Luo pinched his face, putting on a fiendish look. So, this can totally offset the fact that she thinks that I hate Bai Mei for not saving her. Dmo Xian was slightly stunned. Lil Luo, his hand, from her waist, held both of her hands. Yi Qing Luo gave a snort as she maintained her fierce look. This time it has already been cancelled out. If there's a next time and she still wants to use Bai Mei's death to bicker in front of me, I want you to make a choice out of two. Do you hear me? Dmo Xian's eyes turned cold when he mentioned Baisu. At this moment, it had transformed into a layer of warmth. His obsidian-like peach blossom eyes were exceptionally gentle. He raised his hand and stroked the young girl's hair, gently tucking it to her ear. Lil Luo his Lil Luo really, made him unable to extricate himself from loving her. The so-called complaint, the so-called fierceness, they were just doing it on purpose to give Baisu a way out. Yi Qing Luo had never really wanted Dmo Xian to stand up for her and do something to Baisu. She just used this way. She wanted to resolve the grudge between her and Baisu. If Baisu was still clear-headed, she would know what to choose. Yi Qing Luo threw herself into his arms. All right, this matter, let's end it like this, but I've made it clear, there's no next time. Dmo Xian held her waist tightly. Outside the window, a ghost-like shadow floated lightly. Like a kite with a broken string, it swayed unsteadily, unable to find its way. The illusory shadow seemed like it was about to be blown away by the wind. All of a sudden, a slender figure appeared behind the shadow. That person sneered. His eyes under the black robe revealed a hint of coldness. Do you regret it? Do you regret getting yourself into such a situation? The shadow did not turn around. He just stood there quietly. He looked in the direction of the Ancestral Hall as his thoughts drifted. That person continued to sneer. She is such a person. To outsiders, she is cold and ruthless, decisive in killing. But once it involves the people she cares about, she is kinder than anyone else. You hurt her like this, but she still forgave you and even found an excuse to stop the Overlord from taking action against you. You can say that she has put in a lot of effort. Shut up. That illusory shadow's delicate body swayed. She raised her head slightly, her face was cold. You palace of darkness. Don't think that I don't know that the direct cause of my sister's death is all because of you. End of this chapter. Chapter 45:27. That person looked at the shadow indifferently, his face filled with hatred. He scoffed lightly, You should be the clearest about why Bai Mei died. Yi Qing Luo not saving her is within reason, so you have no right to blame her. Bai Su stared unblinkingly at the palace lord of secluded darkness palace, who was clad in a black robe and surrounded by black qi, as she suddenly sneered, Are you speaking up for Yi Qing Luo? Do I need to speak up for her? The man sneered. You heard what she said to Di Zun just now. You know what kind of person she is. Bai Su pursed her lips tightly. Her smoke-like shadow was so dim that it almost melted into the air. After a long while, she then looked coldly at the palace master of Gloomy Palace and gritted her teeth. Don't let me run into you. Otherwise, I won't let a single one of you off. As soon as he finished speaking, her body had already turned into a puff of white smoke, completely disappearing in front of the palace master of secluded darkness palace. Yi Qing Luo and Dmo Xian cuddled for a while. With great difficulty, she managed to suppress Dmo Xian's thoughts of parting ways with Bai Su. The two of them walked out of the room. Xiao Chen looked at the familiar scene in the Bone residence. It was somewhat similar to the scene in the savage blood Bone monarch's memory, yet it was also different. She was still in a daze. Until Dmo Xian wrapped his arms around her waist and asked her gently. Only then did she regain her senses. What are you thinking about? Dmo Xian asked as he pulled her towards the main hall. Yi Qing Luo's eyelashes fluttered. I'm thinking about the blood-bone barbaric king. I'm sleepy. Typing is a little slow. I have to repeat 500 words. I'll edit it in 10 minutes, moi. That person looked at the shadow indifferently, his face filled with hatred. He scoffed lightly, You should be the clearest about why Bai Mei died. Yi Qing Luo not saving her is within reason, so you have no right to blame her. Bai Su stared unblinkingly at the palace lord of secluded darkness palace, who was clad in a black robe and surrounded by black qi, as she suddenly sneered, Are you speaking up for Yi Qing Luo? Do I need to speak up for her? The man sneered. You heard what she said to Di Zun just now. You know what kind of person she is. Bai Su pursed her lips tightly. Her smoke-like shadow was so dim that it almost melted into the air. After a long while, she then looked coldly at the palace master of Gloomy Palace and gritted her teeth. Don't let me run into you. Otherwise, I won't let a single one of you off. As soon as he finished speaking, her body had already turned into a puff of white smoke, completely disappearing in front of the palace master of secluded darkness palace. Yi Qing Luo and Dmo Xian cuddled for a while. With great difficulty, she managed to suppress Dmo Xian's thoughts of parting ways with Bai Su. The two of them walked out of the room. Xiao Chen looked at the familiar scene in the Bone residence. It was somewhat similar to the scene in the savage blood Bone monarch's memory, yet it was also different. She was still in a daze. Until Dmo Xian wrapped his arms around her waist and asked her gently. Only then did she regain her senses. What are you thinking about? Dmo Xian pulled her towards the main hall as he asked. Yi Qing Luo's eyelashes fluttered. Thinking about the savage blood Bone monarch. Until Dmo Xian wrapped his arms around her waist and asked her gently. She then regained her senses. What are you thinking about? Dmo Xian pulled her towards the main hall as he asked. Yi Qing Luo's eyelashes fluttered. Thinking about the savage blood Bone monarch. Chapter 45:28. A trace of helplessness and pampering flashed past Dmo Xian's eyes as he tapped her forehead. I've actually been coaxed out by you. Yi Qing Luo pinched his face. No choice, who asked me to be so smart? She smiled and leaned her head against his chest. A faint smile appeared in his eyes. Her Xian, it was really cute. She knew. In actual fact, Dmo Xian was not because she had coaxed the information out of him. It was just that he did not intend to hide it from her. He understood her. He knew that she already knew most of the things that had happened, even if he didn't admit it. Basically, she could confirm her guess. He pretended to be tricked into answering. He was only cooperating with her on purpose, helping her confirm the guess in her heart. She lazily leaned into Diemoshien's embrace, her legs climbing towards the man's tall and straight body. "I don't want to go anymore, hug me." Diemosien hooked his arm around the young lady's body as she wriggled around him, holding her firmly in his arms. Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes comfortably, like a contented kitten. Diemosien carried her and strode towards the direction of the hall. "Ah Xian, how much do you know?" Yiqing Luo's eyes were still closed and her voice was very soft. Diemosien lowered his head and looked at the young lady's exquisite face as his pupils deepened. "More than you, what do you want to know? What I can be sure of now is that I am the child that the Divine Emperor gave birth to back then. That baby back then was me." She paused, opened her eyes and looked at the man. "The time when the Divine Emperor passed away was 10,000 years ago. When I entered the barbaric Blood Bone King's memories, it was also 10,000 years ago. At that time, there was no Three Springs sect, and there were no so-called four major sections. Then, why would I appear in the Three Springs sect 10,000 years later? It didn't make sense at all. After she inherited this body, it had also fused with all the memories. She knew it clearly. He had grown up in the Three Springs sect. She couldn't understand the problem of time. In particular, the events of the past were obviously very complicated. It was only through the memories of the barbaric Blood Bone King. She still couldn't figure out the real reason behind it. "I don't know the answer to your question." Diemosien sighed softly. "Initially, after confirming your relationship with the Divine Emperor, I had also guessed this reason. I think that since you haven't seen the real reason in the barbaric Blood Bone King's memory space, it means that the barbaric Blood Bone King himself doesn't know." Yiqing Luo nodded her head. The Blood Bone Barbarian King was sealed in the black hole of the Nirvana realm by Feng Go. It was also the place where the Blood Bone Barbarian King later built the Ling Long Palace. The child was also handed over to the hidden guard of the Bone Residence. What happened after that? He really didn't know. After knowing your biological mother's identity, you still want to look for her? Diemoshien's deep eyes faintly rippled with a faint light. Yiqing Luo's hand caressed his cheek. "Don't you want me to investigate my own background?" Diemosien paused for a moment and shook his head. "It's not that I don't want to, I'm worried. The Divine Emperor's Emperor, the God Realm's Emperor, such a high and mighty position indeed makes one worry." Yiqing Luo's lips curled into a faint smile, but her words were filled with laziness. She slightly straightened her body in Diemoshien's arms and used both her hands to hold his face. "But you are also very clear that even if I don't want to investigate, there will always be someone who will find me." Diemoshien's eyes faintly surfaced a layer of extremely faint danger. "Hurry up and read the latest updates." Chapter 45-29. Yiqing Luo's slender jade-like hand gently covered his eyes. "Even if you're around, those people who are eyeing me covetously are still eyeing me covetously." Diemosien grasped her wrist. His eyes, which were as deep as obsidian, stared unblinkingly at her face. He said firmly, "I won't let those people hurt you." Yiqing Luo's brows curved slightly. "I know." She looped her arms around Diemoshien's neck once again and buried her entire body into the crook of his neck. "Ah Xian, regarding my parentage, I will definitely investigate. I must investigate clearly what happened in the past." Saying that, she raised her head again, her eyes sparkling, revealing a confident look. "I promise you, in this process, I will do my best, not to let myself get hurt, and not to do anything that will make you worry." Perhaps it was the young lady's gaze was too sincere. Or perhaps it was the young lady's words was too firm. Diemosien looked at the young lady in front of him. His stern expression, finally, slowly softened. He sighed, the gaze which looked at Yi Qing Luo became increasingly tender and affectionate. Following that, he stretched out his arm to encircle the young lady's petite body, pressing her heavily into his arms. Come on, what you said, these words of yours have no credibility at all. Diamo Xian turned his head, his dark red thin lips reflected a kiss on the young lady's delicate skin. You're always accompanied by danger and uncertain factors. To say that you don't cause trouble, it's impossible. The warm breath, the man's gentle magnetic, mellow voice, mellow like fine wine. It made Yi Qing Luo's heart melted by half. I know you've been unwilling to say, because my ability is not enough to know all these, even if I know, it's something that I can't do anything about. The smile on the corners of her lips deepened. Narrow long eyes, deeply gazed at Diamo Xian's face. But now, Xian, I am very clear what I'm doing. I know myself, because of this decision, what kind of situation will I face. I want to take a gamble, I want to bet on myself, I can. The young lady sentence after sentence, sonorous and forceful words. One had no choice but to believe in her determination. Diamo Xian's hands suddenly exerted force. The girl's delicate body was lifted up by his hands. He opened his mouth and bit down on the girl's pink lip. I will never refute your decision. As their lips and teeth intertwined, the man's low and hoarse voice came. No matter what you want to do, I will accompany you. The man's rich sandalwood scent invaded her body and mind. The girl's eyes curved into crescents as she smiled. Until the man let go of her. Only then did she say with a smile, I know. It's because I have a strong backing like you that I can move forward fearlessly. You are my greatest motivation. Diamo Xian tightened his grip. His forehead pressed against hers. The tips of their noses were touching. Their breaths were tangled together. As he listened to the girl's gentle words, the lines on his face became increasingly gentle. It's my honor to be able to support you. When the two of them arrived at the hall, it was already half an hour later. In the hall, there was a large circle of people. One by one, they wandered around the hall, poking at each other. Apparently they had waited for a long time. They heard footsteps. Everyone looked over at the same time. They saw the two of them who looked like conjoined twins. Yan Xiao Yi raised her hand and covered her eyes. Let us off, the moment we're conjoined, you're already showing off your affection. Chapter 45-30. Yi Qing Luo nestled in Diamo Xian's arms as she lazily tilted her head and looked at Yan Xiao Yi. At this moment, shouldn't you be expressing concern for me? Yan Xiao Yi took a look at Diamo Xian, who was walking over slowly. There was not the slightest trace of emotion on the man's cold face. She shrunk her neck and replied softly, I can tell that you're fine just by looking at the Overlord. What are you worried about? If Yi Qing Luo's body had any discomfort, how could Diamo Xian be as calm as he was now? Diamo Xian carried Yi Qing Luo onto a chair and sat beside her. Soon after, Gu Yun served up a filling meal. Diamo Xian stood by the side and brought it to her lips. Yi Qing Luo opened her mouth and ate a mouthful. She squinted her eyes in happiness. Everyone. They really shouldn't have chosen to meet Yi Qing Luo on the day she woke up. This day obviously belonged to the venerable sovereign alone. Yi Qing Luo ate a few mouthfuls and her stomach was no longer empty. Her body had also warmed up, and that was when she thought of them with great benevolence. All right. How have you been these few days? Did the people from the outside forces or the Palace of Darkness do anything? The few of them rolled their eyes. But he still answered Yi Qing Luo's question. In the past few days, there had been a lot of activity outside. However, this commotion was not because they had attacked the Gu residence. It was because of the Windcloud list. The Windcloud list had been held. Most of the factions that were watching the Gu residence shifted their attention to the honor roll. Only a small portion of people remained to guard the Gu residence. And this movement, it was because of the Palace of Darkness. The wind fame list this time round could be said to be extremely dangerous. Most people were seriously trying to use the excellence list to climb to the top. A small number of people had already joined the Wren family's camp. In the second round of the wind cloud list, just as the people of the major forces were exhausted from the duel, a figure suddenly appeared. The people of the Wren clan in the arena took advantage of the break to attack the forces around them. By the time the other forces reacted, at least 100 elite, profound practitioners had died. Instantly, it caused countless backlash. All the major forces joined forces to demand an explanation from the Wren family. The horses of the Wren family descended from the sky. They started killing right away. Then, the wind cloud list had become a slaughterhouse. Only those who submitted to the Wren family could survive. After such a big thing happened, everyone knew that there was a venerable emperor overseeing the Bone Mansion. Naturally, not many people continued to stare. After listening to their conversation, Yiqing Luo raised her brows in astonishment. Ren Jianying is so impatient? They're fighting in the second round. Maybe he's worried about you. Gu Zixi began to analyze the situation. Ren Jianying could have easily obtained the inheritance rights of the Wren family from second young Master Ren's hands. Moreover, she could have done so in a dignified manner that no one could find any fault with her. However, because second young Master Ren chose you as his backing and Ren Jianying was afraid of you, she didn't dare to make a move against him. So, that's true, after all she's a lady and if she wants to inherit the Wren family legitimately, even if it's coercion and bribery, there would still be people who are not convinced. Yiqing Luo lazily took another mouthful of the thing that Dmo Xian had sent to her lip. After swallowing, he continued, Then, according to the current situation, Ren Jianying has already controlled most of the forces in the Heaven Realm? Yes. Tong Ziqing fished out a piece of map from her bosom and threw it to Yiqing Luo. This is the distribution of forces that the group leader had secretly observed the current situation in the Heaven Realm. You can take a look. Chapter 45-31. Yiqing Luo took the map. Spread out on the table in front of him. The map above was very detailed. Every single faction was clearly marked. He also marked the forces that had submitted to the Wren family. Yiqing Luo leaned into Dmo Xian's arms and looked through the entire map before putting it down. In that case, Ren Jianying has already cooperated with the royal family and both of them are preparing to split the Heaven Realm's territory equally? Tong Ziqing shook her head. I can't tell what Ren Jianying's real motive is based on the current information. Yiqing Luo pointed to a direction on the map. Ren Jianying's ambition is not just to divide the world equally. What she wants should be the control of the entire Heaven Realm. She is planning to wait for the Heaven Realm to completely stabilize, and then counterattack the Imperial family? Hearing this, Gu Zixi expression was somewhat complicated. Yiqing Luo nodded her head. On one hand, she's working with the royal family, on the other hand, she's working with the Palace of Gloomy Darkness, so naturally she wouldn't easily give up half of the country to the royal family. She paused and said, The royal family has the same idea as Ren Jianying. On the surface, they maintained a cooperative relationship. Behind the scenes, they were contending against each other. He was waiting. Let's see who takes the wrong step first. Once he took the wrong path, it would be a complete loss. Gu Zixi pursed her lips and looked at Huang Fuxing worriedly. The Heaven Realm is now divided into two factions. What will happen to the four great families? The only way for the four heavenly families is to band together. Yiqing Luo took a look at Huang Fuxing and then looked at Xiao Jin. They will form a group and then split the world with the other two families. But looking at the relationship between the four great heavenly realms, I'm afraid it will be hard to form a group. After all, the four heavenly families had always been in a state of smiling on the surface but cursing in their hearts. Let them stick together. Therefore, they needed a leader. All the aristocratic families felt that the leader should be one of them. Therefore, it was impossible for them to live in peace. After Yi Qing Luo finished her words, she looked at Xiao Jin and Huang Fuxing's slightly changed expressions, and her lips curled as she continued. But, based on Huang Fu family's current situation, there's a high possibility that they will choose to rely on the Ren family or the royal family. She paused. As for old man Huang Fu, if he's willing, he can first hide in the Gu residence. On the surface, Huang Fu Sheng and Xiao Jin didn't seem to care about the Huang Fu clan. However, deep in their hearts, they didn't want the Huang Fu clan to be destroyed just like that. What they hated the most was the current clan head of the Huang Fu clan and his people. Not the Huang Fu clan. Yi Qing Luo folded the map once again and immediately stood up. She walked towards Tong Ziqing and returned the map to her. No matter what happens to the Huang Fu family in the future, as long as your Huang Fu bloodline still exists, it's not impossible to rebuild the Huang Fu family. Huang Fu Sheng and Xiao Jin's pupils instantly constricted. Their faces were filled with complicated emotions. After the Ren family stabilizes the current situation, the next one will be our Gu mansion. So, let's make the best use of our time and rest well. Yi Qing Luo returned to Dmo Xian's side and stretched out her hand. I suddenly recalled that there's an extremely important matter waiting for me to settle. Dmo Xian held her hand and stood up. His hands naturally circled around her slender waist. They were still a little confused. Yi Qing Luo had already pulled Dmo Xian out of the main hall. Looking at Yi Qing Luo's figure completely disappearing before their eyes, Gu Zixi sighed as she half squatted in front of Huang Fu Sheng and held his hands. What Luo said is right. As long as you and Xiao Jin are around, rebuilding the Huang Fu family is not a problem. Update complete. Mwah. End of this chapter. Chapter 45-32. Huang Fu Sheng raised his head in a daze, his eyes staring deeply at Gu Zixi. In his eyes, there was hesitation and helplessness. He was also unable to sort out his thoughts at this moment. He held Gu Zixi hand and held it tightly. It was as if only by holding her could he feel her by his side. Gu Zixi slowly approached him. Soon after, she stood up and hugged his head. Pressing it into her embrace, she gently soothed his emotions. Towards Huang Fu Sheng, she, who grew up with him, was naturally clear about it. She was very clear about Huang Fu Sheng's thoughts at this moment. All she could do was to stay by Huang Fu Sheng's side and give him warmth. On the other side, Yan Xiaoyi used her elbow to nudge Xiao Jin. Did you hear that? As long as you are with that kid, it's possible to rebuild the Huang Fu family. If the Huang Fu family is destroyed, then so be it. Isn't it better to take this opportunity to reshuffle the cards? Xiao Jin raised his hand and held Yan Xiaoyi's arm. With a little force, he pulled her into his embrace. That ordinary and mediocre face made it shine even brighter, like colored glass, deep and seductive. Yan Xiaoyi stretched out her hand and pinched his face fiercely. The touch of her skin was extremely real. Don't think that you can use your face to divert my attention. The more you act like this, the more it means that you care about the Huang Fu family. Yan Xiaoyi said. Xiao Jin hooked his arm around the woman's neck and bent down to bite her lips. That pair of glazed black eyes shone with an even more enchanting luster, glistening brightly. I have left the Huang Fu family since I was young. What happens to the Huang Fu family is not important to me. He replied in a low voice, without much emotion. Yan Xiaoyi laughed coldly. I know better than anyone what you are thinking in your heart. She pinched Xiao Jin's face harshly. Only when a red mark appeared on Xiao Jin's face did she let go. Her fingertips lightly touched the red mark on Xiao Jin's face, and she curled her lips with a cold smile. This face of yours is really realistic. Xiao Jin's large palm covered Yan Xiaoyi's hand, completely enveloping her small hand in his palm. He pulled her into his arms and hugged her tightly. He didn't want the person in his arms to see his current expression. Yan Xiaoyi buried herself in his embrace and wrapped her arms around his waist. She softened her tone. You know very well that the Huangfu clan has lost its purpose of existence and has become a capital to show off. Didn't Qing Luo say it already? As long as old Master Huangfu is willing, he can stay in the Gu residence, and after the matter has ended, we will reform the Huangfu family, a new Huangfu family that belongs to us. Xiao Jin did not speak again, but his hands were wrapped around Yan Xiaoyi's. He exerted more strength and pressed her tightly in his arms. After Yi Qing Luo pulled Dmo Xian out of the main hall, she rushed towards another courtyard. Dmo Xian pulled her. Are you going to look for Ren Jiaming? I promised him that I would help him save someone. Yi Qing Luo slapped her forehead. It was in order to save that person that I went to the Gu residence's warehouse and discovered the secret in the ancestral hall. She had been unconscious for a few days in the barbaric blood Bone King's memory space. Ren Jiaming would probably go crazy from anxiety, right? Dmo Xian replied. On the second day after you went missing, he left. Yi Qing Luo. Left? He dragged a crippled body and left the Gu residence? Did he want to be captured back by Ren Jianying, to present his head to her? Or did he want Gong Xiaozhu to capture him back to be the prince consort? End of this chapter. Chapter 45-33. As though he had seen through Yi Qing Luo's thoughts. Dmo Xian's slender fingers poked her head. I know, I will definitely do what I promised others. Yi Qing Luo's eyes lit up. She grabbed his big palm with both hands. A pair of long and narrow eyes blinked. His face was filled with obvious joy. You helped him? Looking at the expression on the young lady's face, Dmo Xian raised his brows. He did not speak. He touched his thin lips with his hand. The way his fingers caressed his thin lips. He was so handsome that people couldn't close their legs. Yi Qing Luo decisively hooked her arms around the man's neck and pressed her pink lips against his, planting a kiss on his lip. Then, she gazed deeply at him with her big, wet eyes. After being kissed by the girl, the man was satisfied. Xiaoju will follow him, he will be fine. Yi Qing Luo bounced and jumped into the man's arms. Her 4 limbs were all wrapped around Dmo Xian. She hung all her weight on the man's body. Xian treats me the best. I like Xian the most. The young lady's sweet words were like a ray of sunshine, seeping into Dmo Xian's heart. That pair of bright and mischievous eyes shone into the depths of his eyes at close range. Her heart was filled with tenderness. Everything he did was to make little Luo happy. Lil Luo was happy. He was satisfied. Let's go, let's hurry and settle Ren Jianming's matter, then. We'll go find trouble with the Ren family. Yi Qing Luo climbed down from his body. Dmo Xian rubbed her little head. Then, he summoned Little Nine. Little Nine brought the 2 people in the direction that Ren Jianming was currently at. Even with Little Nine's speed, he had still rushed for at least half an hour in midair. It looked even more remote and gloomy, like a patch of green plants that grew naturally and one couldn't tell what it was. No matter how one looked at it, it was extremely strange. Yi Qing Luo looked at the environment below as she ridiculed in her heart. Can't that fellow Ren Jiaming just stay in the Gu residence properly? He has only been missing for a few days. Is there a need to be so anxious? One person, without any profound energy. And he even ran into such a deep mountain forest. Wasn't he afraid that a magical beast would suddenly appear and swallow him? This should be the place where the person he wanted to save is at. Dmo Xian's head rested lightly on Yi Qing Luo's shoulder as he spoke in a low voice. He closed his eyes. His peerless face was like a painting. When he opened his mouth, his warm breath was still beside her ear. For Ren Jianming, the disappearance is equivalent to the destruction of his hope. Perhaps he thought that his disappearance meant that he refused to save that person. That's why he came here alone. Yi Qing Luo. He's an idiot, right? This was a statement, not a question. Ren Jianming might really be a fool. Haunted her for so long. He didn't even want face anymore. After much effort, she finally agreed. Did he just give up? There must be something wrong with this child's brain. Little Nine stopped in the depths of the forest. Diamo Xian carried Yi Qing Luo down and stood on the ground. As far as the eye could see, everything in front of him was green. The green was strange. Little Nine said that Ren Jianming stopped here. Diamo Xian held Yi Qing Luo's hand as they walked towards the front. Trees after trees flashed past in front of them. Diamo Xian brought her and went around several rounds. All of a sudden, the scene in front of him turned into a huge cave in an instant. Just like when she was in Barbaric Blood Bone King's memory space, changing the scenery. Chapter 45-34. Reverse Enchantment? These 4 words suddenly popped out in Yi Qing Luo's mind. She had only seen this enchantment once in Nirvana Realm, at the base camp of the Dark Forces. Old Man Tsang had explained about the reverse enchantment at that time. It was probably equivalent to the reverse enchantment would hide the place or thing that it really wanted to hide. And for those who didn't know how to break the array, when they entered the reverse enchantment, they would only see the scene displayed by the reverse enchantment. Earlier, a large patch of lush forest or whatever, were all an illusion created by the reverse enchantment. In the enchantment, the place where she was standing was actually this huge cave. How did you know how to break this reverse enchantment? Yi Qing Luo's hands hugged Diamo Xian's arm, her eyes filled with worship. Looking at the young lady's mischievous look, the lines on the man's face softened a little as his eyes oozed out traces of pampering. Since you were trapped in the enchantment, I was helpless. I researched on various ways to break the enchantment. Yi Qing Luo's eyelashes fluttered slightly. Her charming eyes reflected the man's peerless looks. Her eyes were covered with a layer of warmth. He really placed her on the tip of his heart and pampered her, because of a mistake which caused her to get hurt. So he tried his best to make up for it, to make himself stronger, and to be able to protect her safely. She was really very lucky. Yi Qing Luo circled his neck as she kissed his lips hard. The young lady's eyes were rippling like water. Touched, gentle, affectionate. A smile flashed past Diamo Xian's eyes. Immediately his large palm clasped the young lady's slender waist tightly, deepening the kiss. The corner of his gaze seemed to be provoking and also seemed to be warning, as it swept past somewhere not too far away. In the darkness, a figure could be seen faintly, standing at the corner. That person looked at the scene in front of him without blinking. His gaze fell onto that devastatingly beautiful young lady's face. Looking at the young lady's blissful smile. Looking at the young lady's gentle and affectionate gaze. His heart felt as though it was being strangled, as though it was about to suffocate. The words that were in his mouth were swallowed back, until the man's corner of his gaze swept over. That made his body suddenly stiffened. He quickly turned around and left that angle, as though he was fleeing for his life. It was just like the deepest secret in his heart seemed to have been discovered. That kind of panic. What's that sound? Yi Qing Luo's ears twitched as a small head popped out from the man's body, and looked around. Just now, he seemed to have heard light footsteps. Diamo Xian naturally held Yi Qing Luo's hand as he walked towards the direction where that person had left, probably Ren Jianming. Let's go take a look. Yi Qing Luo responded with a N and followed behind Diamo Xian. After walking for a while, Yi Qing Luo indeed heard clearer footsteps. In the dark cave there was a flickering light ahead. A tall figure stood out amidst the light. It seemed to have heard their footsteps. The figure walked even faster. Yi Qing Luo looked for a while and barely recognized the other party. Ren Jianming? That person's footsteps paused, then he suddenly sped up and strode forward. It was that meal. Yi Qing Luo was almost certain that the person in front was Ren Jianming. That child. Was it because she wasn't punctual and threw a tantrum? Yi Qing Luo turned her head to look at Diamo Xian as she said, "I'll go catch that devilish brat. What's the meaning of running away the moment he sees me?" Saying that, she rolled up her sleeves and chased after that person. Hurry up and read the latest updates. Chapter 45-35. Before Diamo Xian could even open his mouth, The girl had already rushed over. He shook his head helplessly and dotingly. Naughty brat, he was a child. He didn't know how he was able to say the words, naughty brat, so calmly. The person in front was running a little slowly. Yiqing Luo merely took a few steps and had already caught up to that person. She grabbed the man's shoulder and turned him around. Under the dim light, Ren Jiaming's expression was ugly, mixed with complicated emotions. The expression in his eyes when he looked at her was also very complicated. After meeting Yiqing Luo's gaze, Ren Jiaming turned his head away. Why are you running? Yiqing Luo pressed his shoulder tightly. Ren Jiaming lowered his head and said nothing. Yiqing Luo directly slapped his forehead. Speak, why are you running? You don't want to see me? No. Ren Jiaming opened his mouth, his voice a little hoarse. Yiqing Luo snorted coldly. No, then why did you run away when you saw me? Ren Jiaming stammered, unable to utter a single word. Especially when he saw the man walking out from the darkness behind the young girl. His face turned even paler. The man was noble and elegant as he slowly walked over. It was as if a king had descended. It caused people to unconsciously submit to him. He lowered his head again and did not speak again. Yiqing Luo followed Ren Jiaming's gaze and looked behind. After seeing that it was Dmo Xian, then, he turned his head and looked at Ren Jiaming. Didn't you just agree to help? Did you have to run away when you saw me? Her gaze went past Ren Jiaming and swept behind him, where the light came from. At that time, I didn't set a time with him, so I didn't know about that person's situation. Don't tell me that I'm late by just a few days, but I'm already too late? No. Ren Jiaming immediately said, I don't blame. You didn't blame me for running away so quickly when you saw me. Yiqing Luo pushed him away and walked towards the light. Is the person you want to save inside? Ren Jiaming leaned to the side. His gaze landed on Dmo Xian again. His pupils constricted. Then, she looked away in a panic. He speedily caught up with Yiqing Luo's footsteps as his heart trembled in fear. He saw the intimate scene between Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian. His heart would ache. Actually, he had discovered his feelings towards Yiqing Luo a long time ago. It was just very clear. He was unable to stand by Yiqing Luo's side. The person standing beside her should be someone even more powerful. Therefore, he had been suppressing his feelings. However, the look in Di Zun's eyes just now had obviously seen through all his thoughts. The Overlord knew about his feelings for Yiqing Luo. Ren Jiaming tried hard to calm himself down, putting himself in the position of needing Yiqing Luo's help to save someone. He knew it was impossible for him to compete with Venerable Sovereign. He had never thought of standing by Yiqing Luo's side. Yiqing Luo continued forward. He walked closer to the light. Then, he saw a luminous pearl flickering in and out of existence. After the luminous pearl, it was an ice bed that looked like an ice sculpture. No, it wasn't Wanru. It was because the bed was made of ice. It was also emitting a thin white cold current. On top of that ice bed, an old man with a white beard laid there with his eyes closed, not moving at all. Not knowing why, she felt that the old man's figure was a little familiar. Yiqing Luo frowned slightly as she walked towards the ice bed. That person's face on the ice bed was clearly reflected in her eyes. Her pupils suddenly expanded. A disbelieving expression flashed past her eyes. Chapter 45-36. The person on the ice bed had a white beard and white hair. He was dressed in a white robe. Even if Yiqing Luo closed her eyes, she would still be able to recognize that face. Old Man Tsang. The person lying on the ice bed was Old Man Tsang. Dmo Xian also walked up, and when he saw the person on the ice bed, he was slightly stunned. He looked at the girl beside him, who was obviously stunned. He stretched out his arms and pulled her into his embrace. You didn't see wrongly, it's him. Dmo Xian's lips curled up slightly as he replied gently. Yiqing Luo suddenly regained her senses as she hurriedly walked towards the ice bed and squatted down beside it. Ren Jiaming walked over from behind, looking at Yi Qing Luo's expression. And Dmo Xian, who was standing by the side. Sensing that something was amiss, he asked, "Do you know him?" Yi Qing Luo wanted to stretch out her hand and touch the old man's hand. But he paused midway. Her breathing was a little erratic. She slowly raised her head and pursed her lips as she looked at Ren Jianming. "Why is he lying here? Was the person on the ice bed Old Man Song's body?" The person Ren Jianming asked her to save was Old Man Song? Ren Jianming looked deeply at the old man on the ice bed. "He wanted to protect me, so Ren Jianying, protection? Ren Jianying?" Yi Qing Luo's expression changed slightly. He subconsciously raised his head and looked at Dmo Xian. Something was not right. If this person was Old Man Song, then the timing didn't match at all. 10,000 years ago, Old Man Song had fallen into a deep slumber within the Azure Dew bracelet, becoming its guardian spirit. And Ren Jianying was the person who had just appeared. How could he be lying here because of Ren Jianying? But, if this person wasn't Old Man Song, then how could it be explained that he had the exact same face as Old Man Song? Dmo Xian's large palm landed on the young lady's head as he gently rubbed it and said, "This isn't a difficult matter. Don't forget that when the barbaric Blood King was suppressed in the Nirvana realm, he was still in the Heaven realm, mobilizing his own forces." His gaze faintly swept over Old Man Song, who was lying on the ice bed. Perhaps this is Old Man Song's avatar. Doppelganger? Yi Qing Luo was stunned. "You can play this way? Then, why has Old Man Song never mentioned it to me?" Dmo Xian pondered for a moment, because he himself might not even know. Yi Qing Luo pursed her lips tightly. She lowered her eyes and looked at the Azure Dew bracelet on her wrist. Her slender, jade-like fingers lightly stroked it. "I previously promised Old Man Song that I will help him find his own body, and let him become a new person." Yi Qing Luo's charming eyes flashed a faint radiance. Her gaze again fell on the person on the ice bed. "If it's Old Man Song, can I?" "Yes." Dmo Xian's hands wrapped tightly around her slender waist. "He is Old Man Song. If he is able to fuse Old Man Song's spiritual body into his body, he will become a real person." Wait, what are you guys talking about?" Ren Jiaming was confused as he listened to their conversation. He took a look at Old Man Song and looked at Yi Qing Luo. "What do you want to merge with him? What do you mean? Miss Gu, aren't you here to save him?" Ren Jiaming panicked a little. Yi Qing Luo didn't say a word. Finding Old Man Song's body wasn't as happy as she expected. On the contrary, there was a heavy feeling. She knew the reason why Ren Jiaming was panicking. It was the same thing that she was worried about. Because she couldn't be sure whether this Old Man Song in front of her was related to Ren Jiaming or the Old Man Song that belonged to her. ***, the Karsic Old Man Mo was always looking for the right time to write. "I tried my best to annoy you. I'll continue to work hard, sob sob sob." End of this chapter. Chapter 45-37. For Ren Jianming, Old Man Song was a benefactor to him. It was another kind of existence. It had nothing to do with her Azure Dew bracelet, therefore, if his body and soul were to fuse together, he would not be able to do so. Would the person after the fusion still be Old Man Song? Split body, no matter how it's split, it's still the same person. Dmo Xian seemed to have seen through Yi Qing Luo's thoughts. He explained in a gentle voice, "Actually, when I first saw Old Man Song, I felt that his soul wasn't complete. However, Old Man Song's consciousness and mind were very clear, so I didn't think too much about it. Based on the current situation, the Old Man Song in the Heaven realm should be a wisp of Old Man Song's spiritual consciousness. The majority of Old Man Song's soul is condensed within the Azure Dew bracelet. Perhaps because of the Azure Dew bracelet, it helped Old Man Song consolidate his own consciousness, allowing him to retain a healthy self-awareness even after losing a wisp of spiritual consciousness. When Yiqing Luo heard Dmo Xian's words, her eyes sunk slightly. Dmo Xian's words were actually very simple. Whether it was Old Man Tsang in the azure dew bracelet or him on the ice bed, they were all Old Man Tsang. One was the soul. One is the body. As for why Old Man Tsang's body could move freely in the heavenly realm, it was because there was a strand of Old Man Tsang's spiritual consciousness left in this body. But why did that wisp of spiritual awareness appear in the heaven realm, and the reason why it was related to the Run family perhaps only Old Man Tsang himself knew. So, can he be saved? Yiqing Luo asked. If so, yes. Dmo Xian's deep eyes gazed deeply at her face as his thin lips curled into an extremely shallow arc, and only then can his soul return back into his body. He paused. He glanced in Ren Jianming's direction. Ren Jianming did the right thing. He knew to ask for help. Ren Jianming felt goosebumps all over his body from this sudden look. A chill ran down his spine. He clenched his fingers tightly, suppressing the frightening chill. He took a deep breath and said, "What are the two of you talking about? What exactly is your relationship with him?" Yiqing Luo looked at Ren Jianming. What did Ren Jianming do to him? Yiqing Luo's tone was slightly awe-inspiring. He was sure that this old man was Old Man Tsang. Yiqing Luo naturally wouldn't ignore it, and she was a very protective person. He had to avenge Old Man Tsang. Ren Jianming looked at her serious expression and answered subconsciously, "Elder Tsang is an elder of our Ren family. Elder Tsang saw through eldest sister's ambition and wanted to stop it, which caused eldest sister to retaliate. At that time, I didn't believe that big sister would do something so heartless and extreme just for the sake of the Ren family. But once, when I came out of Elder Tsang's mountain, I was chased. Elder Tsang arrived in time to save me. At that time, Elder Tsang was trying to block the arrow that was shot from afar for me. He fell down and hasn't woken up even now." Ren Jianming's emotions fluctuated as he recalled this memory. His fingers were tightly clenched, as if he was suppressing some sort of emotion. Then, he shut his eyes tightly. "That arrow belongs to the Ren family. At that time I didn't understand. Now I understand. Everything at that time was Big Sister's plan. She was afraid of Elder Tsang's ability, afraid that Elder Tsang's status would affect her to control the Ren family. So she intentionally tried to kill me in Elder Tsang's territory." Chapter 45-38. Ren Jianming gritted his teeth. His eyes were dark and hazy. He knows that as an elder of the Ren family, Elder Tsang will definitely not stand idly by. She used me to lure Elder Tsang out, and then used me to make Elder Tsang lie here, unable to wake up. So, right from the start, Ren Jianming's target was Elder Tsang. Or rather, even if he didn't scheme against Elder Tsang, he could also take the opportunity to create trouble for Ren Jianming. Or rather, he had inadvertently destroyed Ren Jianming. It was enough to make him lose the right to be the successor of the Ren family. No matter what the reason was, as long as one of the two was achieved. To Ren Jianming, it was all good and no harm. Because Ren Jianming schemed against him, so you think. He has a way to deal with Ren Jianming? Yiqing Luo asked. Ren Jianming took a deep look at the ice bed. Yes. Elder Tsang will definitely be able to deal with Ren Jianming. He is an elder of the Ren family. At this point, his voice suddenly became softer. Most importantly, I don't want anything to happen to Elder Tsang. I want him to recover. Elder Tsang was tricked because of him. And he was lying in this place. How could he not feel guilty? However, because of Ren Jianming. However, he didn't dare to openly look for capable people to save Elder Tsang. He could only maintain his image as a hedonistic young master on the surface while secretly searching for a way to save Elder Tsang. Until he met Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo muttered to herself for a moment and replied calmly, "I will save him. As long as you're willing. I can agree to any conditions." Ren Jianming clenched his fists tightly as he looked at Yi Qing Luo anxiously. Yi Qing Luo shook her head. There's no need for any conditions or requests, I'm the one who wants to save him. Perhaps it was because Yi Qing Luo's tone was simply too serious. Ren Jianming clenched his fists and asked tentatively, You know Elder Tsang too? What do you mean by what you just said? Does Elder Tsang have a very good relationship with you guys? To me, he is the most important elder. Yi Qing Luo's charming eyes overflowed with radiance, so I will save him. Ren Jianming wanted to ask something, but he closed his mouth in the end. No matter what the relationship between Yi Qing Luo and Old Tsang was, since Yi Qing Luo had agreed, she would never go back on her word. She would definitely make Elder Tsang open his eyes again, but a little difficult. Yi Qing Luo slowly squatted down beside the ice bed. She held the hand gently. It was bone-chilling. It was extremely hard. Yi Qing Luo's hands were trembling. Miss Gu, you can't touch Elder Tsang. Ren Jianming saw Yi Qing Luo's action and was so shocked that his eyes deepened. This is the 1,000-year frost. Old Tsang is protected by the cold air of the 1,000-year frost. This cold air will hurt you. It doesn't matter. The emotions in Yi Qing Luo's eyes fluctuated strangely. Her heart was beating wildly. She held Old Man Tsang's hand. Although it was cold, but it was truly Old Man Tsang's body. Ren Jianming saw that Dmo Xian had no intention to stop him, so he didn't say anything more. If the cold air really hurt Yi Qing Luo, Dmo Xian would probably be the first one to stop Yi Qing Luo from touching the ice. He placed all of his thoughts on Elder Tsang. Miss Gu, you said it's a little difficult. What do you mean? His situation is not as simple as you think. Yi Qing Luo let go of his hand. The reason why he fainted is not only because of Ren Jianming's schemes. Chapter 45-39. I can only do my best to help him. This is my promise to him. I promised him she would help him find a body that belonged to him and turn him into a true human. The tenderness in Yi Qing Luo's eyes gradually dispersed. Instead, there was determination in her eyes. Regarding Old Man Tsang's situation, Yi Qing Luo didn't really understand. Through Dmo Xian's explanation, she roughly understood. As long as he fused Old Man Tsang's spiritual body with his body, the memories between the two would also merge. Yi Qing Luo remembered that Old Man Tsang had mentioned it before. He wanted to turn Old Man Tsang back into a true human. He needed to collect all 5 pieces of the Azure Water Divine Artifact. Currently, she only had the Azure Water Ring, the Azure Water Silk Chain, and the Azure Water Pendant. He was still missing the Azure Crystal Pendant and the Azure Water Light Chain. As of now, she was still unable to sense the existence of the other 2 divine artifacts in her hands. Yi Qing Luo looked at the person on the ice bed and said word by word, I will definitely remember the Tsang Shui 5-piece set and will definitely find a way to let you stand in front of me in a human form. The Azure Dew bracelet suddenly scorched her hand. It seemed to be Old Man Tsang's reply. Yi Qing Luo's lips curled into a smile as her fingertips covered the Azure Dew bracelet. Just as he was about to ask Old Man Tsang's spiritual sense if he still had any memories of his body, the man behind her suddenly grabbed her slender waist. His expression became slightly serious. Something has happened in the Gu residence. Yi Qing Luo immediately raised her head. What happened? Before I left, I set up an enchantment outside the Bone residence. Dmo Xian held her still icy cold hand. There's a fluctuation in the enchantment. Someone has left the enchantment. Leave? Yi Qing Luo's heart thumped. At the critical moment of the Heaven Realm, if he left the Gu residence so easily, he would be captured and skinned at any moment. There were clues to the Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade and the Divine Emperor's Tomb. These 2 points attracted the attention of the various forces. On top of that, Ren Jianming had led the Ren family to take advantage of the situation during the leaderboard. Ren Jianying planned to control the entire heaven realm in a short period of time. Furthermore, Ren Jianming was in the Gu residence. If the people in the Gu residence left the Gu residence, they would definitely be killed. The walls had been gnawed until nothing was left. Let's go. Let's return to the Gu residence first. Thinking of these consequences, Yi Qing Luo's expression turned extremely ugly. Ren Jianming, I'll have to trouble you to take care of old man Song. Me too. Ren Jianming was just about to speak, but he was interrupted by Yi Qing Luo. This place is a very good hiding place. You stay here and guard old man Song. Without waiting for Ren Jianming to speak, she took the lead and headed back in the direction they came from. When Yi Qing Luo arrived at the Gu residence, the Gu residence was already in a mess. Gu Yun stood at the entrance of the Gu residence and opened her arms. All of you, calm down. Sir Di Zun has specially ordered this servant not to let you leave the Gu residence. There must be a reason for Sir Di Zun. Yan Xiao Yi and Gu Zishi were blocked at the door. Their expressions were ugly and dark. One of their hands was on Gu Yun's arm, wanting to push her away. Beside him stood Tong Ziqing and Long Yunzhan, whose expressions were also not very good. He looked around. However, Gui Wu and the others were nowhere to be seen. Chapter 45-40. Yan Xiao Yi and Gu Zishi, who were struggling to rush out of the Gu residence's main door, stopped. Since the other party used such a method, then they must have set up an inescapable net, waiting for you to walk right into it. Gu Yun saw that she had persuaded the both of them and immediately added on. Yan Xiao Yi and Gu Zishi looked at each other. The expressions on their faces were complicated, as though they were forcefully suppressing the surging emotions in their chest, trying their best to calm their own emotions. Yan Xiaoyi's fingers clenched tightly as she punched the air. Then what should we do? Don't tell me we are just going to stand here and wait? Gu Yun lowered her head in difficulty. I think we should wait for the Overlord and eldest young miss to return to the residence. You also said it's an inescapable net. How could Cousin Xiao and Ah Xing be those people's match? Gu Zishi was panting heavily as she spoke. She paced back and forth anxiously on the spot. Her face was filled with unconcealable anxiety. It won't happen. Yan Xiaoyi took a deep breath as her voice trembled slightly. She could tell that she was restraining her own emotions. Since they used such a method to intentionally lure Qiao Jin and Huang Fuxing away, then they must have made up their minds to use them as bait to lure Qing Luo out. Yan Xiaoyi wasn't sure if she was convincing herself or convincing Gu Zishi. Before Qing Luo appears, within a short period of time, their lives will absolutely not be in danger. Gu Zishi's eyelashes fluttered as she opened her mouth, wanting to say something but swallowed it down as she changed to something else. What you said is right. They will be fine, they won't. But, after the both of them finished saying this sentence, but both of them fell into silence. No matter how they tried to convince themselves, their hearts were still unable to cross that hurdle. They were unable to control themselves not to worry about them. Their lives wouldn't be in danger. But the others? They were such proud people, how could they endure becoming the other party's captives? Just at this moment. What happened? Who has left the Gu residence? A clear voice sounded, as though it was faintly discernible in the air. When that voice rang, the group of people who were squeezing at the entrance with a heavy atmosphere suddenly raised their heads and looked over. A huge-tailed fox descended from the sky. Immediately after, a tall and upright Dmo Xian leapt down from the tailed fox's back. He leaned forward and hugged the other person on the fox's back. The girl's flowing red dress was like a flowing fire, pouring down in torrents. When he saw that person, everyone's eyes suddenly lit up. Qing Luo. Yan Xiaoyi seemed as though she had grabbed onto a life-saving straw as she dashed forward towards Yi Qing Luo. Jin Zihi. He has left the Gu residence. Her words were concise and comprehensive, as she swiftly told Yi Qing Luo about the matter. It was probably, when the Ren family was unreasonable and tyrannical, many families and forces chose to submit to him. Among them was the Huangfu family. Huangfu family's target had always been Yiqing Luo. As a result, the Huangfu clan came to the Gu residence under the orders of the Huangfu clan. He didn't know what method the Huangfu clan had used. He had actually tricked those two cousins out of the Gu residence. When Qiao Jin and Huangfu Sheng were in the Bone residence, the people from the outside world couldn't do anything to them. But they left the Gu residence. How would the Huangfu clan's people possibly let them off? The more she recalled, Yan Xiaoyi's anxiety grew even more. Dear, this chapter has ended. I wish you a happy reading. Big smiley face. Chapter 45-41. She held Yiqing Luo's hand as her palms were filled with cold sweat. Qing Luo, Huangfu family. Must be setting a trap for us. Jinzi will be fine, he will be fine, right? I know. Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes slightly as her long and narrow pupils reflected a piercingly cold glint. Huangfu family's motive is probably not just to lure me into their trap. That Ren Jianying. It's time to meet her. It had always been her who schemed against others. How could others scheme against her? As well as the brothers whom she cared about? Since the other party was trying all ways and means to lure her out, then she would grant them their wish. Yiqing Luo's lips curled into a smile. Swinging into a cold smile. Yan Xiaoyi wanted to persuade her. But when her gaze landed on Dmo Xian, she swallowed her words back. Right. The Overlord was here. The Overlord would protect Yiqing Luo well. Huangfu family. In the huge courtyard, there was a rain of blood and a foul wind. Sand and pebbles flew as trees were uprooted, turning into a pile of ruins. And in that flying pebbles hurricane, faintly, a few figures could be seen. Qiao Jin and Huangfu Sheng stood in the middle of the ruins. Their long robes fluttered along with the hurricane. Endless profound waves were released from both of them. It surged like the rolling waves of the ocean. A murderous aura filled the entire space, and the surroundings of the courtyard were surrounded by hundreds of guards. There were also dozens of secret guards hidden in the dark, surrounding them tightly. In front of the two of them, an insolent mocking voice came. You two, your words are pretty. You said you weren't interested in the Huangfu family, but the minute you heard that Huangfu family was re-electing for the position of the family head, you immediately rushed back. Your ambition has been exposed. The smoke dispersed, revealing Huangfu Dongyu's face. On both sides of him stood the third brother Huangfu Qi Fei and the dying Huangfu Fengyan. It was the brother and sister trio again. Qiao Jin's ordinary face had an extremely solemn expression. After hearing Huangfu Dongyu's words, a sliver of disdain surfaced in his eyes. He couldn't even be bothered with Huangfu Dongyu. We're not here to run for the position of patriarch. Huangfu Xing clenched his fists, unable to maintain his composure. I want to find grandfather. What right does a bastard have to call me grandfather? Huangfu Fengyan revealed a sinister expression, a shameless mother giving birth to a shameless son. Is he even fit to appear in the Huangfu clan? Living under the same roof and breathing the same sky with you, I even feel disgusted by the air. The three Huangfu siblings couldn't understand this at all. Why did Grandpa have to be so biased towards a young child? Any one of them would be hundreds of times stronger than that bastard. But Grandfather would never be able to see them. However, not anymore. The Huangfu clan now belonged to them. They could arrange it however they wanted. He could change the rules however he wanted. Swish! A sharp and cold gaze ruthlessly stared at Huangfu Fengyan. Huangfu Xing's eyes were filled with murderous intent. His tightly clenched fingers made cracking sounds. Qiao Jin's hand pressed on Huangfu Xing's arm. Don't be angry. She deliberately provoked your anger so that you would take the initiative to make a move. His expression was calm, and his ordinary face exuded a sense of nobility and majesty. When he looked at Huangfu Fengyan, he easily suppressed all of Huangfu Fengyan's voice. Chapter 45-42. Qiao Jin clearly did not do anything. but his aura had an aura that could suppress everything. Huang Fuxing's muscles were all tensed up, and there was an irrepressible anger in his emotions. But, after looking down at the hand on his arm, he still suppressed his anger. Huang Fu Fengyan knew what his bottom line was. She was also very clear about what words could provoke his most direct anger. Huang Fu Fengyan mentioned his mother at this time. It was obviously intentional. If he really made a move, she would fall into the opponent's trap. Huang Fu Fengyan was frightened by Huang Fuxing's gaze. Her face instantly turned pale. But she forced herself to show a provocative expression. But the enraged Huang Fuxing only looked at her with an extremely vicious gaze, and did not have the intention to make a move. Huang Fu Fengyan did not achieve her goal, and was even stared at by Huang Fuxing's vicious gaze. There was an inexplicable feeling of strangeness. She looked at the side, at the gentle and elegant Huang Fu Qifei, and her eyes were slightly in a mess. She took a deep breath, then looked at Huang Fuxing and continued, "Don't make it sound so nice. At the end of the day, you just want to compete for the position of the head of the Huang Fu family. But let me tell you, you are a bastard, a wild beast that has long been removed from the family tree. Both of you have no right to compete. Who cares about the competition for the position of the head of the family? I will only say it once, hand over the old man. What you want to do in the future has nothing to do with us." Qiao Jin impatiently interrupted her. Although grandfather is no longer the head of the Huang Fu family, his authority is still there. Now that the selection for the position of head of the family is imminent, grandfather naturally has to uphold justice in the Huang Fu family. Huang Fu Fengyan sneered and said, "You say that you want to see grandfather, but you just want to make use of grandfather's fondness for you to gain his support." Qiao Jin did not even bother to look at her, but stared directly at Huang Fu Dongyu and said, "Tell me directly, you specially made use of the old man to lure us here. What is your motive?" Huang Fu Dongyu placed his hands behind his back and sneered, "Naturally. I want you to never be able to return to the Huang Fu clan." There was an obvious murderous intent in his eyes. "Both of you are incompatible with the Huang Fu family. Both of you don't have the right to stand in the Huang Fu family. The only way to prevent you from ever returning to the Huang Fu clan is..." Huang Fu Dongyu grinned, revealing a treacherous sneer as he said word by word, "Both of you die." As soon as he finished speaking, a slim and graceful figure walked out from behind the two of them. The man was dressed in black, and his black hair was tied into a simple bun, revealing his exquisite face. That person had an outstanding temperament, and his every movement was filled with nobility. Between her eyebrows, there was the beauty of a woman, as well as the sharpness of a person in a superior position. When Huang Fuxing saw who it was, he cautiously moved closer to Qiao Jin. "Ren Jianying." "Yes." The person who came was the current head of the Ren family, Ren Jianying. Ren Jianying's posture was noble and arrogant. She raised her chin slightly, revealing her fair neck. Her red lips curled slightly. "I have no choice." First Mistress Gu refused to leave the Gu residence. "If I want to see her, I can only use this method." Although Ren Jianying was smiling, but under that smile there was a huge turbulence. End of this chapter. Chapter 45-43. She raised her finger. She didn't waste any words. She directly made her move. Qiao Jin vaguely saw the extremely faint black aura that Ren Jianying swept away when she made her move. It was a little strange. When he looked again and again, he didn't see anything. The next moment, Ren Jianying's attack had already rushed in front of him, as expected of the person who crippled Ren Jianming and became the new head of the Ren family with her own strength. When she made her move, there was no hesitation at all. Qiao Jin and Huang Fuxing didn't even have time to react. They quickly raised their hands to counterattack. The two sides were fighting. He didn't know if it was Qiao Jin's illusion. Every time Ren Jianying made her move, Qiao Jin could vaguely see a wisp of extremely faint black yin qi lingering around Ren Jianying. Bang! There was a loud explosion. A figure was sent flying by the mysterious wave and fell heavily to the ground. Then, there was the sound of weapons colliding. Huang Fuxing. Qiao Jin wanted to catch Huang Fuxing, who was flying out. But he didn't have time to move. Ren Jianying had already attacked from the other side. As soon as she got close, Qiao Jin could almost clearly see the black aura seeping out of Ren Jianying's eyes. That kind of black aura made one's heart palpitate with fear. His heart skipped a beat. The expression on his face also changed slightly. Oh no! This black aura, it was the evil aura of the Dark Palace. Ren Jianying. Ren family, Dark Palace. No wonder Ren Jianying could so smoothly seize the position of the head of the Ren family, and also so smoothly split the world with the imperial family in the Heaven Realm. With the help of the Dark Palace. It probably wouldn't take long. The imperial family would have to lower their heads to Ren Jianying. This Ren Jianying really couldn't be underestimated. Huang Fuxing suddenly let out a miserable scream. Qiao Jin's gaze immediately looked over. He saw that Huang Fuxing's face was pale, his hands forcefully blocking in front of his chest. An obvious black aura suddenly penetrated his body. Blood gushed out in an instant. Qiao Jin lifted his foot, wanting to rush over. However, the woman's soft laughter rang in their ears. "I'm really sorry. You two be obedient and you won't have to suffer so much." This voice was very close. Qiao Jin suddenly raised his head. He met Ren Jianying's sharp and beautiful eyes. She curled her lips at him and smiled sweetly. However, there was a bloodthirsty sneer in his eyes. Qiao Jin quickly retreated. Xia was actually this powerful? To actually be able to use the mysterious Yin energy of Dark Ghost Palace properly. His movements were a step too slow. The power that erupted from Ren Jianying shook the surrounding air. Suddenly, he felt as if something was squeezing his chest. The next moment, blood flowed out from Qiao Jin's mouth. His body also staggered a little. "Don't worry, I'll be gentle. Besides, I don't want your lives." Ren Jianying was still smiling faintly. "What I want is just to use the two of you to trick Miss Gu to come over. Stop struggling. None of you will be able to escape." The smile at the corner of Ren Jianying's mouth grew wider. She walked in the direction of Qiao Jin and Huang Fuxing. Every step she took, the black aura that lingered around her body became stronger. It carried a cold, killing intent. At this moment, a cold and melodious voice rang out leisurely. "I didn't expect that I would have such a big face for Miss Ren to spend so much effort to trick me." Chapter 45-44. That voice seemed to carry a smile. But it was filled with extreme chilliness. Every word and sentence could directly strike into one's heart. "I'm also very curious, is it all of us who can't escape, or eldest Miss Ren? Can't escape?" The low laughter turned colder and colder. "Why not, let's give it a try?" When Ren Jianying heard this voice, her expression instantly changed. But very quickly, a smile surfaced on her face. She stopped in her tracks, as she looked towards the direction of the voice. She saw the horizon, from far to near, a huge nine-tailed fox descending from the sky. A fiery figure leapt down from the back of the nine-tailed fox. Devastatingly beautiful, like a dream or fantasy. Eldest Miss Gu. On seeing the person, Ren Jianying's expression changed several times. She restrained the majestic profound waves, as she smiled at Yiqing Luo. "It's really difficult to meet you." Yiqing Luo slowly walked towards her. Her footsteps were neither fast nor slow. The expression on her face was calm and indifferent, without much fluctuation of emotions. "Eldest Miss Ren has put in so much effort, just to meet me. It shows that eldest Miss Ren absolutely has true love for me." Yiqing Luo replied with a smile. Her long and narrow eyes rose, but there wasn't any warmth in her eyes. She stopped in front of Ren Jianying. The two of them exchanged glances. Both of them were grinning. In the dark, the undercurrent was surging. "If I don't come, wouldn't I disappoint eldest Miss Ren?" Yiqing Luo said. Ren Jianying laughed lightly. Actually, we have the same goal, why not make a deal? Yi Qing Luo raised her brows. Oh? Ren Jianying, I want Ren Jiaming and you want old Master Huangfu, how about we exchange people? Patriarch Ren. Huangfu Fengyan's expression changed, as she cried out involuntarily, Grandfather cannot be handed over to them. Originally, she thought that this was a sentence that touched the heaven and earth. But immediately following that, the second half of Huangfu Fengyan's sentence came out from her mouth. Huangfu family is still waiting for grandfather's words. If we let grandfather call for them now, there's a possibility that grandfather will find the next successor from those two bastards. After all, there was Huangfu Jin. In the current Huangfu family, the only one who had golden pupils and was recognized by the ancestor as the successor. Whether it was the old man or the elders of the Huangfu family, they would probably choose to support Huangfu Jin because of his appearance. Most people with absolute power and strength would only be loyal to their family. That's your family's business. It has nothing to do with me. Ren Jianying glanced at him indifferently, her eyes filled with disdain and mockery. Huangfu Fengyan was both angry and annoyed. She clenched her fists and said, Didn't you say that you wanted to cooperate with the Huangfu clan? You can't just care about your own interests and ignore us. Fengyan. Huangfu Qifei's elegant brows furrowed as he reached out to grab Huangfu Fengyan's arm, signaling her to shut up. Ren Jianying swept her gaze in the direction of the Huangfu clan. His expression was extremely arrogant. Cooperation has always been driven by interest. Why can't I just care about my own interest? Ren Jianying rolled her eyes at her, as if mocking her 5 fingers and stupidity. Following that, his attention returned back to Yi Qing Luo. What do you think of this suggestion of mine? I feel that there's no need. Yi Qing Luo smiled as she opened her mouth. His footsteps were getting closer and closer to Ren Jianying, until he stood in front of Ren Jianying. End of this chapter. Chapter 45-45. Yi Qing Luo leaned forward slightly as she got closer to Ren Jianying. She leaned close to Ren Jianying's ear. She laughed softly. This distance was extremely close, so close that Yi Qing Luo could clearly feel that when she got closer, Ren Jianying's body had turned stiff. Even his breathing had become a lot more hurried and messy. Yi Qing Luo's slender brows rose slightly as her pink lips curled into a smile which didn't look like a smile. Eldest young Miss Ren seems very anxious. Her words had just ended. Ren Jianying hurriedly took a step back. Her breathing and emotions were obviously even more messed up. Yi Qing Luo took another step closer as she maintained the distance between her and Ren Jianying as she suppressed her voice. Ren Jiaming is the person I want to protect now. If I give him to you just because you say so, wouldn't I lose my face? The young lady's tone and voice was obviously joking. Ren Jianying was just about to open her mouth. Suddenly, she felt a chill on her neck. A ray of light flashed past her eyes. Ren Jianying lowered her eyes and saw a flame feather fan pressed against her neck. The handle of the fan had a dagger's length sharp blade as it stuck close to her skin. Ren Jianying's body turned even more stiff as even her voice had a slight change. What do you want to do? To catch the bandits, first catch the ringleader. Yi Qing Luo smiled sweetly as her voice was clear and melodious, totally not looking like she was using a dagger to press against someone's neck. Ren Jianying's fingers clenched tightly as she suppressed the panic in her heart to keep herself calm. It had been a long time since she had lost her composure like this. She shouldn't be like this. No matter what happened, she would absolutely be able to deal with it calmly. Ren Jianying shut her eyes tightly as her voice had already calmed down. Eldest young Miss Gu, even if you capture me, it's actually not of much use. You've seen it for yourself, the 3 Huangfu siblings have deep enmity towards me. Even if it's what I say, they won't listen to it. The meaning behind her words. Even if they captured her, the 3 Huangfu siblings would also take action. Yi Qing Luo casually replied with an "oh" word and innocently blinked her eyes. I don't intend to capture you to negotiate terms with them. She paused for a moment, and the corners of her mouth curled up into an extremely shallow arc. He was extremely evil. Her tone and expression seemed to be mocking the Huang Fu clan. She didn't put them in her eyes at all. That kind of ostentatious confidence made Ren Jianying feel uneasy. As expected, in the next instant the girl moved even closer. Even the sharp blade on her neck was pressed a little closer to the skin on her neck. Call the person behind you over, let's have a face-to-face chat for a while. Yiqing Luo raised her brows at her. Ren Jianying's expression froze. What do you mean? I don't understand what you're talking about. There are no outsiders here, so there's no need to pretend. Yiqing Luo tilted her head as she beamed. The person behind you has schemed against me for such a long time, still not intending to reveal his true face? Ren Jianying's eyelashes fluttered. Why are you asking this? I want to kill the person behind you. Yiqing Luo smiled. Ren Jianying. Pausing for a moment, she shook her head. I don't have any person behind me. Everything was arranged by me alone. The number of times I've crossed hands with the Palace of Darkness is even more than the amount of salt you've eaten. Do you think? I can't tell that your body has already been contaminated by the evil Yin Qi? Yiqing Luo sneered. Do you think I can't tell that the reason why you're able to control the entire heaven realm in such a short period of time is because the Palace of Darkness made use of the evil Yin Qi to raise your profound grade, and used a forbidden curse to enhance you, which is why you could be so successful. Chapter 45-46. Yiqing Luo's slender fingers lightly tapped on the sharp blade. Looking at the blood flowing out from the lady's neck, her lips curled. Eldest young Miss Ren, aren't you afraid that, after you've lost your value, secluded Darkness Palace will directly swallow up everything that you've worked so hard for? Ren Jianying's pupils constricted. Eldest young Miss Gu also knows how to sow discord? Whether it's to sow discord or not, you know very well in your heart. Yiqing Luo shrugged. Anyway, the person who loses everything by then isn't me. Ren Jianying remained silent for a moment as her expression turned ugly. What do you mean? Yiqing Luo's long and narrow eyes curved, as her lips curled into a teasing arc. She slowly leaned closer to Ren Jianying. Her voice seemed to be bewitching, as it was suppressed to an extremely low tone. After all, secluded Darkness Palace's existence has already exceeded the boundary of your prediction, isn't it? Ren Jianying's body suddenly stiffened, as her eyes widened, staring at Yiqing Luo in disbelief. Her eyes revealed astonishment and astonishment. Between her eyes, there were some unnecessary emotions, as the undercurrents were surging. You. Her lips trembled slightly, as she wanted to open her mouth, but didn't know how to ask. In her eyes, there was an obvious hesitation. There's still a lot of things that I know. Yiqing Luo smiled as she patted her shoulder. If I didn't guess wrongly, I should also exceed the boundary of your prediction, that category. Plus, Ren Jianying chose me. So, you panicked, targeting the Gu residence several times, scheming against me. Trying to get rid of this unknown factor, right? Following Yiqing Luo's words, each and every word was spat out from her mouth. Ren Jianying's face was deathly pale. That was the panic after her thoughts were exposed. That was the panic after a secret which had been hidden for many years was discovered. Yiqing Luo had been paying attention to her expression. She was almost certain that right from the start, her guess was right. She laughed lightly, as her gaze was cold and piercing. Unfortunately, this unknown factor. You can't get rid of it. Ren Jianying suddenly raised her hand, as she pressed on Yiqing Luo's wrist, which was holding the glower flame fan. She used a lot of strength. Yiqing Luo smiled as she stared into her eyes and said word by word, In your past life, you failed because of your cowardice, and in this life, you will repeat the same mistake because of your ambition. You? How did you? Ren Jianying pursed her lips tightly. Even her eyes were a little scarlet. Indistinctly, A wisp of black mysterious Yin-Chi seeped out. Before Yi-Ching Luo said it out. She was still hoping for a fluke. Perhaps Yi-Ching Luo's words, which had a hidden meaning, was just to trick her. But now she knew. Yi-Ching Luo really knew about her hidden secret. She thought that it was impossible for anyone in the world to know this secret. But Yi-Ching Luo knew. Her secret had been found out by someone. Miss Gu, if you are smart enough, you should know what to do. The smile on Yi-Ching Luo's lips deepened. Scram. Tell the person behind you, if he wants something, he can come and get it himself. After hiding for so long, it's time for him to see the light of day, she finished speaking. He moved his wrist slightly. A wave of profound energy rippled. She pushed Ren Jianying away. Ren Jianying staggered as she fell onto the ground. She had not regained her senses as she sat on the ground in a daze. Her eyes were filled with shock as she looked at Yi-Ching Luo in panic. In her eyes there were turbulent waves. Chapter 45-47. Yi-Ching Luo turned around and walked towards Qiao Jin and Huang Fuxing's direction. She put her hands behind her back and walked slowly. The expression on his face was extremely calm. Let's go. She spoke to the two. Qiao Jin took a look at Ren Jianying, who had fallen onto the ground, and looked at Yi-Ching Luo. Just like this? What else do you intend to do? Yi-Ching Luo rolled her eyes at him. Kill Ren Jianying? Qiao Jin shrugged his shoulders. You can decide. I don't care. Yi-Ching Luo walked straight ahead as she said, let Ren Jianying pass the message. An ambitious person like her, over at the secluded palace, will die sooner or later. Yushi Palace wouldn't let anyone with ulterior motives exist. Ren Jianying was obviously not a woman who would submit willingly. Now, the two sides were cooperating happily. That was because both sides could make use of each other. Ren Jianying, keeping him by her side, was like keeping a ticking time bomb. The people from the Palace of Darkness would naturally not let Ren Jianying go. There was no need for her to kill Ren Jianying. After all, she was also Ren Jianming's sister. After all, Ren Jianming had taken care of old man Tsang's body for such a long time. Even if he didn't want to give face to the monk, he still had to give face to the Buddha. So, he would give Ren Jianying's life to the Palace of Darkness. Huang Fuxing lowered his eyes in guilt. I'm sorry. I acted on my own and made you come all the way here. I understand. Yi-Ching Luo waved her hand. Those who are able to cooperate with the Palace of Darkness are jackals of the same tribe. The thing that the Palace of Darkness likes to play with the most is the human heart. The only person who can make you leave the Gu residence despite knowing that the situation is dangerous is old Master Huangfu. In the entire Huangfu clan, these two cousins only cared about Huang Fujiantian the most. Something that could elicit a reaction from both of them. It could only be Huang Fujiantian. Huang Fuxing looked in Qiao Jin's direction and hesitated for a moment before saying, Qiao Jin seems to be also because of his mother. Mother? Yi-Ching Luo looked at Qiao Jin. Yi-Ching Luo had never asked about the relationship between Qiao Jin and the Huangfu family. She had never heard Qiao Jin mention anything about his mother. The Huangfu family didn't just use old Master Huangfu as a bargaining chip, and even dragged Qiao Jin's mother? Looks like this matter was a little complicated. Yi-Ching Luo walked to Qiao Jin's side and placed her hand on Qiao Jin's shoulder. Tell me, what's your plan now? Yi-Ching Luo's voice wasn't considered soft. Not far away, the three Huangfu brothers had ugly expressions on their faces. They looked at each other, then at Ren Jianying in unison. The reason why they were here was because of the god of war. It was all because he believed Ren Jianying's words. They were relying on Ren Jianying. But now, Ren Jianying, his face was ashen and pale. His eyes stared unblinkingly at Yi-Ching Luo. It was as if he had suffered an extremely severe shock. Earlier, Ren Jianying was easily subdued by Yi-Ching Luo. Even Ren Jianying wasn't Yi-Ching Luo's opponent. They Wouldn't that be the expressions of the three instantly turned extremely ugly as they swiftly turned their gazes towards Qiao Jin. Yiqing Luo was asking Qiao Jin for his opinion. As long as Qiao Jin didn't pursue the matter, Yiqing Luo would definitely not make a move. But Qiao Jin. Let them beg for mercy from Qiao Jin. How could they do it? For them. Qiao Jin was a child born from a lowly servant. What rights did he have to become their younger brother? And what rights did he have to become the future successor of the Huangfu family? Chapter 45-48. A person whom he totally disdained. Now, he actually wanted them to beg for mercy? Even if their bodies were icy cold, they could clearly feel the murderous aura raging around them. They were unable to convince themselves to open their mouth. On the other side, Qiao Jin glanced sideways as he looked at the devastatingly beautiful face which was just inches away from him. The young lady's hand was casually placed on his shoulder. The corners of her lips were curled into a teasing arc. Apparently, she had intentionally raised her volume when she asked that question earlier, intentionally stirring up panic in the Huangfu family. Qiao Jin merely shot a glance and took a step back, widening the distance between him and Yiqing Luo. He raised his hand and patted his own shoulder as his deep eyes looked towards the horizon, at that huge nine-tailed fox who was standing in the sky. I still want to live a little longer, just say what you want, don't touch me. At the instance when Yiqing Luo's arm rested on his shoulder, Qiao Jin felt that his back was about to be pierced into a hornet's nest by some kind of emotion. The Overlord was still by the side. Did Yiqing Luo want him to die? Yiqing Luo smiled as she waved her hand. At most he would use his eyes to stare at you, but he wouldn't dare to really do anything to you. Qiao Jin expressed that with just this glare. He could already feel death waving at him, all right? The two of them were still chatting as though there was no one else around. This was simply belittling the surrounding group of people into dregs. The three Huangfu siblings' expressions turned uglier by the minute. Finally unable to tolerate it any longer, Huangfu Fengyan's fingers clenched tightly as she stared at Yiqing Luo with a venomous gaze. Huangfu Jin, if you touch us, you should know the consequences. Qiao Jin and Yiqing Luo were talking. Their voices suddenly stopped. Their gazes turned towards Huangfu Fengyan. His ordinary face, under the piercingly cold eyes, actually appeared a bit strange and treacherous. Huangfu Fengyan was so shocked that her face turned pale, but she still forced herself to continue speaking. We can't touch old master, but we can still touch your mother. If you don't persuade Yiqing Luo, if anything happens to us, we will return it to your mother 100 times. You can try. Let's see how long the old man can protect your mother. As Huangfu Fengyan spat out the words one by one, the crowd was stunned. The air around Qiao Jin seemed to have condensed into frost. The emotions in the depths of his eyes were dark. Like a whirlpool, it was as if it wanted to devour everything. This was the first time Yiqing Luo saw Qiao Jin's emotions fluctuating so much. What are you staring at? Huangfu Jin, you are an inauspicious person, you are a bastard. You. Pa! Suddenly, a clear and resounding slap resounded. The sound of the slap was so crisp that it almost echoed throughout the entire space. Huangfu Fengyan, your mouth is so dirty. Do you want me to help you wash it? A woman wearing a blue dress appeared. The woman held a crescent-shaped scythe that shone with black light. Xiao Yi, when Qiao Jin saw the person who had arrived, the icy cold expression on his face instantly dissipated. The people who came were Yan Xiao Yi and Gu Zishi, who had followed behind Yiqing Luo and finally managed to catch up. Yan Xiao Yi strode over to Qiao Jin's side, blocking him behind her. Following that, she stabbed the black scythe into the ground as she sneered at Huang Fengyan. If you dare to scold one more time, I'll cut off your tongue in minutes. That slap made half of Huang Fengyan's ears buzz. The scorching pain made her unable to open her mouth to speak. The moment she moved, it affected her muscles. It was so painful that it tore her heart apart. Chapter 45-49. Xiao Jin wrapped his arms around Yan Xiaoyi's waist. He placed his head on her shoulder. A light laugh came out from his lips. That laughter was filled with obvious joy. The coldness in his body had already faded. The expression on his face had also returned to his usual look. Now he had Xiaoyi. He was no longer alone. The lonely days that he had been through. It would not appear again. Feeling the man's aura, it gradually calmed down. Yan Xiaoyi patted the back of his hand and pacified him. Be good, I'm here. Whoever dares to insult you and your mother, I'll swing my sickle and they will definitely die. She patted Xiao Jin's hand. Then she raised her head and looked towards the direction of the 3 Huangfu siblings, as one of the 4 heavenly families. Now that the Ren family has power in the heaven realm, your Huangfu family has to rely on the powerhouses who were once on equal footing to survive. No wonder you're not able to become the next successor of the Huangfu family. This sentence made the 3 Huangfu siblings' faces turn gloomy. Trying to use Ah Jin's mother to threaten Ah Jin? Go ahead and try. As long as you dare to touch Ah Jin's mother, we will absolutely kill you directly. Yan Xiaoyi's eyes were filled with coldness. You! Huangfu Dongyu clenched his teeth, but had no way to refute her words. Xiao Jin's mother was their last bargaining chip. They indeed didn't dare to move. Trying to sow discord? By the side, Ren Jianying, who had regained her composure, opened her mouth slowly. The current her was no longer as flustered as before when her secret was exposed by Yiqing Luo. If one looked closely, they would be able to see a complacent smile on her brows. Complacent? Yiqing Luo's brows rose slightly. She had been paying attention to Ren Jianying's situation. Ren Jianying had been immersed in the fear of her secret being exposed. Her emotions had been unable to calm down. But, at that moment earlier, she seemed to have gained some confidence. Yiqing Luo's brows twitched as she suddenly thought of something and immediately opened her mouth. Go! Just as she finished her words, a voice rang out. All of a sudden, the entire ground caved in. Yiqing Luo's feet were in the air as she swiftly fell downwards. Gravel flew everywhere as the mountains collapsed and the ground cracked. The next moment, her waist tightened. Her body was pulled into a warm embrace. Yiqing Luo hooked her arm around his neck. The man picked her up by the waist, and with a sudden leap, he landed on the ground. Ah Xian! Yiqing Luo's little head popped out from his arms. Where is this place? Diamo Xian put her down on the ground, but his other hand was still hugging her waist tightly. Array. Another formation. Yiqing Luo surveyed the surroundings. Earlier, when I saw Ren Jianying's sudden confident look, I already guessed it. The Palace of Gloomy Darkness had countless forbidden spells and spells. This was especially true for forbidden formations that defied the will of the heavens. Since Ren Jianying was working with the Palace of Gloomy Darkness, then, he used all sorts of methods to trick Huangfu Sheng and Xiao Jin out of the Gu residence. He had already achieved his goal of luring her here. How could he not have prepared a foolproof plan? Moreover, this time, it was definitely not a small fight. Ren Jianying controlled the heavenly realm, which meant that the heavenly realm was already in the hands of the Dark Palace. The Palace of Gloomy Darkness had revealed her secret to the public. Apparently, they were anxious to get something from her. The mastermind behind the Palace of Gloomy Darkness finally couldn't take it anymore? Now, the place they were in was a stretch of empty space. It was a patch of gray, and they couldn't see the scene in front of them clearly. Chapter 4550. Is this an illusion? Yiqing Luo couldn't see the surroundings clearly, so she retracted her vision and raised her head to look at Diamo Xian. If this is an illusion, then are you real or fake? Diamo Xian's wrist, which was locked on her waist, suddenly tightened. He pressed her petite body firmly into his arms. Following that, he lowered his head and placed it on her shoulder. His thin lips were very close to her earlobe. His warm breath splashed onto the young lady's skin. Lil Luo isn't always able to easily differentiate whether I'm real or fake. So now Lil Luo tell me, am I real or fake? The man's low and hoarse voice was very magnetic and alluring. As he spoke, he gave out a low and light laugh. Yiqing Luo's petite body trembled slightly. There was a scorching feeling on the skin on her neck. She rolled her eyes at the man as she raised her hand to block the man's mouth, which was on her neck, and pushed his head away. Fake, fake! My Xian is not this kind of beast who can be aroused anytime and anywhere. She still didn't know what kind of array this was. He was just messing around there. What if this illusion was something? The outside world could see it clearly. Wouldn't it be too embarrassing? Looks like Lil Luo still doesn't understand me well enough. Dmo Xian's thin lips rose slightly as his face was handsome and elegant. His hand slid upwards and held on to Yiqing Luo's little hand, which was nudging his head. When facing Lil Luo, I'm a beast. Yiqing Luo. She admitted defeat. She slapped away Dmo Xian's messing around hand. Yiqing Luo walked forward, and as she walked, she looked around. Stop fooling around, let's find out what this place is first. Everyone should be scattered in different parts of the array, so we have to find everyone first to ascertain everyone's safety. Dmo Xian's hands hugged Yiqing Luo's slender waist tightly from behind. Following that, he placed his head on her slender back. He sighed softly. I feel that I haven't been alone with you for a long time. I'm really not happy. Yiqing Luo halted her footsteps as she held onto the man's large palm and turned around. She raised her head, and her glistening eyes met Dmo Xian's eyes. Recently, there are indeed a lot of things. She knew what Dmo Xian was worried about. Ever since they arrived in the Earth domain, she had always been separated from Dmo Xian. It wasn't easy for them to meet. Then, they immediately separated due to other matters. Dmo Xian missed him. How could she not miss him as well? Yiqing Luo's arms encircled the man's waist and her voice softened. Everything will be settled soon, from now on. We will be together every day and never be separated again. Yiqing Luo buried her head in the man's arms. She did not notice that Dmo Xian's lips had slightly curled upwards because of her gentle words. Also, his pair of peach blossom eyes that were like a pool of spring water seemed to be faintly discernible as he glanced at a certain place in the sky. It seemed to be a provocation. It also seemed to be a warning. Then, his thin lips curled up again. He buried his head in the young girl's neck. I feel that this time is still very far away. How will Lil Luo comfort my lonely heart? It was rare to see her man acting coquettishly. Yiqing Luo's brows were overflowing with tenderness. She laughed softly. Her hands cupped the man's face as she slowly placed her pink lips on his and planted a kiss on his lip. All right, I'll make it up to you after we return, be good. Dmo Xian's large palm locked onto Yiqing Luo as he deepened the kiss. His peach blossom eyes were filled with smiles. End of this chapter. Chapter 45-51. Looking at the man's complacent look, Yiqing Luo's expression turned even more gentle and tender. This man was addicted to acting coquettishly. Yiqing Luo pinched his face. All right, let's go find out how to leave this godforsaken place. This time, Dmo Xian didn't pull her along to display his affection. Instead, he held her little hand and followed behind her obediently. What's going on? Xiao Yi. Hold on tight. Zishi, don't move. The earth quaked and the mountains shook as the ground kept on collapsing. Yan Xiao Yi and the rest frantically found a safe place as they stabilized themselves. About the time it took for an incense stick to burn. Only then did the shaking of the earth and mountains slowly stop. Qiao Jin held the dagger which was stabbed into the stone wall, while the other hand held onto Yan Xiao Yi. The both of them were hanging on the edge of the cliff. Below them, because of the collapse earlier, had turned into a bottomless abyss. And on the other side of the cliff, Gu Zishi and Huang Fusheng were hugging each other tightly. The place where the both of them were standing had cracked stone walls, as though a slight movement would cause them to fall. The surroundings had turned into a pile of ruins because of the earlier tremors. The place where the four of them were at was extremely dangerous. There was a possibility that a slight movement would cause the next wave of collapse. Then it would cause the next wave of collapse. Yan Xiaoyi maintained the calmness of her breathing as her eyes surveyed the surroundings. Finally, her gaze landed on a group of people on another mountain not too far away. Huangfu family and Ren Jianying. Ren Jianying stood right at the front as her face was filled with an unconcealable cold smirk. Yan Xiaoyi silently cursed him for being sinister. She immediately raised her head and looked at Xiao Jin. "How is it, can you still hold on?" Xiao Jin replied, "No problem, let's go up first." "Amen, hold on tight, I'll do it." Yan Xiaoyi's slender hand moved as the black sickle in her hand suddenly swung upwards. The black sickle blade swept past as a blue light floated, only to see the black sickle blade piercing into the highest rock wall. The gravel rolled down with a crashing sound, as though it was about to collapse for the second time because of the black sickle blade's collision. The both of their bodies started to fall bit by bit. Crack! There was a slight noise. It seemed like the black scythe blade was stuck somewhere on the rock wall. The moment Xiao Jin's dagger, which was supporting the weight of two people, lost its strength due to the crack in the rock wall. Both of their bodies were entangled by a blue ribbon that the blade of the black scythe had drawn. The other side of the ribbon was wrapped around the black scythe blade. He steadied himself in midair. The two of them took a deep breath and followed the ribbon to the edge of the cliff. The sound of rocks tumbling into the abyss sounded as if the cliff was about to collapse again. On the other side, the two of them also helped each other to leave the most dangerous area. However, as he stood on this side of the cliff, he felt a chill run down his spine. The four of them still did not dare to act rashly. The four of them surveyed their surroundings, then looked at the group of people on the opposite hill. His expression changed slightly. "Where are Qing Luo and Overlord? Why don't I see them? Earlier I seemed to have seen the Overlord charging towards Ah Luo." Gu Zishi was searching the surroundings as she said, "It should be the Overlord bringing Ah Luo to some safe place. The Overlord has Little Nine, Qing Luo also has Chi Chi and the rest, so they should be fine." The few of them looked at the mountain top in front and immediately leapt up, heading towards the direction of Ren Jianying and the rest. Ren Jianying and the rest's faces were filled with complacency. They still want to look for Yi Qing Luo. They probably don't know that Yi Qing Luo has already been sent to another space by our palace lord. Huangfu Fengyan laughed complacently. Add bookmark for easier reading. Chapter 45-52. Without Yi Qing Luo around, can they still survive? Huangfu Dongyu's lips curled into a sinister sneer. Huangfu Fengyan sneered, "Of course not. These few trash, in the lower realm like Nirvana realm, they might be experts, but this is Heaven realm, Who do they think they are? We can finally kill those two eyesores, it's so satisfying." Huangfu Dongyu and Huangfu Fengyan exchanged glances as they smiled. "Don't be happy too early." Huangfu Qi Fei's gentle face turned gloomy as he said calmly, "Haven't you noticed, the Overlord has disappeared too?" After Huangfu Qi Fei's reminder, the two of them then reacted. Yi Qing Luo wasn't the only one who disappeared in the quake. There was also the Overlord. Huangfu Fengyan's complacent smile froze on her face. She clenched her fists tightly as she gritted her teeth in anger. That woman! What's so good about that woman? The Overlord is actually so protective of her. With the Overlord following her, even if it's that array, there's no way to kill that woman. That's right. Who said we're going to kill her? Ren Jianying sneered as she raised her chin, her half-squinted beautiful eyes flashed past a trace of ruthlessness. Even if the Overlord entered the array, as long as the Palace Lord isn't willing to let them out, there's no way they can leave that space. As she said that, she smiled as she looked towards a certain direction behind the crowd. There sat a tall figure dressed in a black robe, entirely shrouded in darkness. He held a bronze mirror in his hands. Both eyes were staring at the bronze mirror without blinking. Wisps of black aura constantly lingered around his body, rolling and surging. When Ren Jianying looked at that person, a pair of beautiful eyes revealed a faintly discernible charm. Her lips curled into a smile. Her condition was excellent, perfect. It made her exquisite and beautiful face look even more beautiful and dazzling. Anyone could see that. Ren Jianying was interested in him. However, the man who was stared at by such a beautiful lady with an inviting gaze full of tender feelings didn't even raise his head, as his gaze was fixed on the bronze mirror. As if he had seen something. Under the black robe, the pair of sinister black eyes were instantly covered with frost. The cold air around his body also dispersed at this moment. Suddenly, he slammed the bronze mirror into the ground. His aura also followed suit and became filled with killing intent. For a moment, the atmosphere became extremely oppressive and strange. The three Huangfu siblings didn't dare to speak again. Ren Jianying hid the seductive look in her eyes and glanced at him and the bronze mirror that was pressed on the ground. If her memory served her right, the copper mirror in his hand was used to see what was happening inside the spell formation, which meant that he could directly see everything that Yi Qing Luo and Dmo Xian had experienced after they entered the array. After the palace master of Gloomy Palace sent him into the formation and into another space, he held the bronze mirror and looked at the situation inside the formation. How could it suddenly? Why is he so angry? Did he see something in the bronze mirror? Why do I feel like... This palace lord of secluded Darkness Palace was extremely concerned about that young lady called Yi Qing Luo. At the thought of this, a trace of unwillingness flashed across Ren Jianying's eyes. She was interested in the palace lord of secluded Darkness Palace, because she felt that, in this world, only someone like the palace lord of secluded Darkness Palace, someone with status and identity, was worthy of her. She was merely working together with the palace lord of secluded Darkness Palace, tasting some benefits from the palace lord. Chapter 45-53. If she could be with the palace master of secluded Darkness Palace, she became the mistress of the Palace of Abyss. It would be even easier for her to get what she wanted. She wouldn't have to submit herself to an elder of the Palace of Gloomy Shadows who could only say a few words. Thinking of this, Ren Jianying calmed herself down and put on a beautiful smile as she walked towards the palace master of the secluded palace. Her steps were slow and graceful. When she walked in front of the palace master of the Gloomy Palace, she leaned forward and smiled gently at him. "Palace master, do you think I'm right?" When Ren Jianying leaned forward, her shiny black hair cascaded down. The fragrance of a woman seeped into the nose of the palace master of Gloomy Palace. There were even a few strands that landed on the back of the man's hand. The palace master of the Netherworld Palace frowned and looked up. Under the black robe, his pitch-black eyes stared coldly at Ren Jianying. The emotions in his eyes were extremely calm. There was not the slightest fluctuation. "Get out of my way," he said, his voice cold and authoritative. Ren Jianying's smile froze on her face. But very quickly, his smile returned and he slowly straightened his body, putting some distance between them. She then asked with a smile, "Palace Master, do you think I'm right?" The eyes of the Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace were indifferent as he asked word by word, "What did you say?" Ren Jianying. His face contorted in embarrassment. She tried her best to please him. He didn't even notice her. Ren Jianying took a deep breath as she maintained her smile. "I've told Huang Fu and the other young masters and young miss that as long as Palace Lord refuses to release them, Yi Qing Luo and the Overlord will not be able to escape from that array, right?" She paused and then continued, "Palace Master, your formation is the best in the world. Even venerable sovereigns are no match for you." The eyes of the Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace dimmed. He hung his head again. He shifted his gaze away from Ren Jianying and stared unblinkingly at the bronze mirror on the ground. His aura became much colder. Ren Jianying was very sensitive to other people's emotions. Naturally, he felt the flames on the body of the palace head getting colder and colder. She hurriedly changed the topic. Palace Lord will definitely be able to achieve your wish, but those two from Huangfu family are here and they seem to have sensed that Yi Qing Luo's disappearance is related to us. I wonder how Palace Lord is going to deal with those 4 people? My wish has been fulfilled. The voice of the Palace Master of Netherworld Palace was a little low. He gently placed his hand on the back of the bronze mirror. His tone was filled with disappointment. He was afraid that he would never be able to fulfill his wish in this lifetime. He suppressed the unnecessary emotions that he shouldn't have and followed Ren Jianying's words to look forward. On the other side, Yan Xiaoyi and the other 3 had already landed on the mountain that they were on. Yan Xiaoyi wielded the black scythe and charged over aggressively. It was as if they were going to fight. The pupils of the Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace constricted. How to deal with them? They were the people whom Yi Qing Luo valued the most. If they were hurt, Yi Qing Luo would be upset. Especially when the people who hurt them were his men. Those 2 young masters from the Huangfu family, Palace Lord had previously promised to hand them over to the Huangfu family to deal with. Those 3 are now waiting for Palace Lord's opinion. Ren Jianying sensed the hesitation in the Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace. She smiled and reminded gently, "Listen to Palace Lord's words." The Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace's eyes wavered even more. Chapter 45-54. After some time, his fingers suddenly clenched tightly. The bronze mirror on the ground was once again held in his palm. He spoke calmly, "Up to you." Ren Jianying's red lips rose as her voice turned coquettish. "Then I shall make this decision on behalf of Palace Lord." The Palace Lord's gaze fell back onto the bronze mirror as he didn't bother about Ren Jianying. Ren Jianying, who didn't get any response, flashed past her eyes with a sliver of embarrassment and humiliation. But she didn't reveal any of it on her face. Instead she smiled and bowed towards him as she turned around and returned to the front of the 3 Huangfu siblings. "Patriarch Ren, what were you talking about with that Palace Lord earlier?" Huangfu Fengyan's gaze turned towards the man dressed in black robe. Anyone could tell what she was thinking in her eyes. Ren Jianying saw the emotions in Huangfu Fengyan's eyes as she snorted in disdain. But the smile on her lips was very shallow, nothing much, just asking Palace Lord how he intends to deal with those 4 people. After all, they are Yi Qing Luo's good brothers. What did Palace Lord say? Huangfu Fengyan's expression changed slightly when she heard that. She knew the Palace Lord's feelings towards Yi Qing Luo. If it was because of Yi Qing Luo's relationship with Palace Lord. But if he didn't let them do anything to Huangfu Sheng and Huangfu Jin, they really didn't dare to act rashly. Ren Jianying's eyelids drooped slightly as she seemed a little shy and sweet. Palace Lord said, "Everything is up to me." Huangfu Fengyan's expression froze as her eyes were filled with disbelief. Ren Jianying's intention was extremely obvious. Coupled with her shy and timid expression, Chu Yunxing couldn't help but sigh. It was hard not to misunderstand. But wasn't that Palace Lord of Seclusion Palace in love with Yi Qing Luo? Palace Lord really dotes on Patriarch Ren. Huangfu Qi Fei suddenly stood in front of Huangfu Fengyan as he gave an elegant smile. "I wonder how does Patriarch Ren wish to deal with those 4 people?" Ren Jianying arrogantly raised her chin as her brows were filled with cold arrogance. "Since I've promised you on behalf of Seclusion Palace that I will let you deal with those 2 Huangfu bastards, I will keep my promise." Huangfu Fengyan felt that something was amiss. She frowned and said, "Ren family head, are you sure Palace Mistress really?" She had yet to finish her words. Huangfu Qifei pressed down hard on her arm. The strength of his 5 fingers seemed to have pierced into her flesh. Huangfu Fengyan's face turned pale from the pain, and she couldn't say a single word. Huang Fu Qifei smiled warmly and continued Huang Fu Fengyan's words. Many thanks, Patriarch Ren. Then leave the four of them to our Huang Fu clan. Ren Jianying's ice-cold gaze swept past Huang Fu Qifei and landed on Huang Fu Fengyan. She sneered and curled her lips, her red nail lightly pressed against her lip. The Huang Fu family really needs a smart person like you to take charge of the situation. Huang Fu Qifei's smile grew even wider. Many thanks for the praise, Patriarch Ren. Ren Jianying waved her hand arrogantly, turned around and walked towards the palace master of Twilight Palace. He looked at her back as she left. Huang Fu Fengyan's expression was extremely ugly as she bit her lower lip and asked softly, "Third brother, what do you mean by this? It's fine if you're stupid at home, but in the current situation, you're still stupid. Even if you die, you deserve it." Huang Fu Qifei slowly let go of her wrist, and the space between his brows was still as warm as jade. But the words that came out of his mouth were bone-chilling. Chapter 45-55. Huang Fu Fengyan took a deep breath. "Third brother, I know that we need to borrow her strength, but she is only one of the four great Tian families, and our status is not lower than hers." "Shut up." Huang Fu Qifei snorted coldly. "What you said was in the past. But now there are no four great families, there is only a Ren family." Huang Fu Fengyan stared at Huang Fu Qifei in a daze. After a long time, she finally spoke with a hoarse voice. "Third brother, do you want to fight Big Brother for the position of Patriarch of the Huang Fu clan? Rob?" Huang Fu Qifei smiled warmly, and there was faint warmth between his brows. Didn't Big Brother seize his current position from Huang Fu Jin as well? Huang Fu Fengyan widened her eyes in shock. Huang Fu Qifei moved closer to her. Lifting his hand, he placed it on her shoulder and patted her gently. "Since this position doesn't belong to Huang Fu Jin, it can belong to Big Brother. Why can't it belong to me? In terms of strength and strategy, I am above Big Brother, am I not? Fourth sister, think carefully about how you want to choose your future path. Third brother really appreciates you." As he finished speaking, Huang Fu Qifei wore a warm smile and walked in the direction of the four people who had come to greet him. Huang Fu Fengyan was stunned on the spot. His heart was thumping non-stop. What did third brother mean by that? Was he forcing her to make a choice? From a long time ago, she knew that this seemingly warm and gentle third brother wasn't as simple as he seemed on the surface. They also knew that third brother had always been smarter than them. But he had never thought that he would be interested in the position of Patriarch of the Huang Fu family. In a vast and empty space that stretched as far as the eye could see, Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian walked for a long time, but the surrounding situation didn't change at all. Yiqing Luo didn't sense any other signs of life. She tugged at Dmo Xian's sleeve. "Ah Xian, isn't something amiss? No matter how we walk, we seem to be going in circles, not to mention meeting other people." Dmo Xian halted his footsteps and lowered his eyes to look at her. "You've finally discovered it." "Yiqing Luo, you mean you already knew?" Dmo Xian nodded. "That's right, from the moment we entered, we already realized it." "Yiqing Luo, then why didn't you say so earlier?" "I want to be alone with you for a while." Dmo Xian wrapped his arms around her slender waist and buried his head into her neck, inhaling the delicate fragrance from her body. Yiqing Luo's heart immediately softened. The expression on his face also softened. This man really knew how to soothe her temper. Yiqing Luo helplessly stared at him as she stretched out her hand and pinched his face. "I think you are intentionally trying to see me embarrass myself." Dmo Xian's large palm clasped her little hand as he chuckled. "I just want to look at you." Yiqing Luo. "Flirt again." She put on a serious face and got down to business. "If I'm not wrong, this array has separated us from Xiao Yi and the others. Unless we break this array, otherwise we won't be able to see Xiao Yi and the others." "Xiao Yi and the others will be fine, right? Separate her from her brothers." Was their goal to target her or Qiao Jin and Huang Fuxing? Those three Huang Fu family's siblings all had strong ambitions. Towards Qiao Jin's existence, they were fearful. Towards Huang Fuxing's existence, they were jealous and indignant. If they were given a chance, they would definitely not let Qiao Jin and Huang Fuxing off. End of this chapter.